Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Naruto was neglected, left Konoha, and became a legend part 2? Meanwhile in Duchess Ophelia's bedroom, Azane and Zenith stand on opposite sides of the Duchess' bed with their staffs gripped firmly in their hands. A tense silence hangs in the air, punctuated only by the gentle rustling of their robes as they shift their weight. Mother. I'm ready, Azane begins, her voice low and measured. Zenith meets her daughter's gaze with her eyes steeled with determination. Then let us begin, she replies, her tone prepared to cast the spell. Azane nods slowly as her jaw is set in a firm line, and with a deep breath, both women began to chant in unison, their voices weaving together in a melodic harmony. The air around them hums with energy, the very fabric of reality seeming to bend and twist to their will. Azane feels her staff in her hands grow warm as the incantation reaches its crescendo, pulsing with the raw power of the Helaga spell. She could sense the wellspring of magic swirling within her release. Zenith's eyes were alight with determination across the bed, her face etched in concentration as she channels her own reserves of energy into the spell. The two women were a study in contrast, yet their purpose is unified and their focus absolute. Helaga, mother and daughter declare, thrusting their staffs forward. A brilliant, radiant light erupts from the tips of their staffs, enveloping the Ophelia's frail form in a cocoon of shimmering light green energy. The air crackles with power and the very walls of the chamber seem to vibrate with the intensity of the magic. Azane could feel the immense drain on her reserves, her body trembling with the effort of maintaining the spell's potency. The radiant light begins to slowly dim as the shimmer of energy dissipates into the air like motes of stardust before Azane and Zenith lowered their staffs, their breaths ragged and labored. It worked, Zenith whispers, seeing Ophelia's healthier form, but her long black hair is now white. Azane feels a surge of triumph wash over her, but the immense drain on her magical reserves soon catches up to her. She sways and her staff slips from her trembling grasp as her vision grows hazy. Azane! Zenith cries out, rushing to her daughter's side as Azane's legs buckles beneath her, but she catches her daughter in her arms, cradling her limp form tenderly. Azane's eyelids flutters with her breath coming in shallow gasps as she fights to remain conscious. I'm all right, mother. Just need to rest, she murmurs, her voice barely above a whisper. Zenith's brow creases with worry as she could not help but feel a swell of pride at her daughter's unwavering dedication. You have done well. Rest now and regain your strength, she said softly, brushing a stray lock of silver hair from Azane's pale face. All right, Azane says, as her eyes slip close and surrendering to the overwhelming fatigue. Thank you, Zenith. You and Azane have saved me from the brink of oblivion, Ophelia said, her voice still weak but filled with warmth and a grateful smile spreading across her lips. Zenith smiles with relief washing over her as she gently lays Azane's unconscious form onto a nearby chaise lounge. It was our honor, your grace. Now that you have regained your strength, we can turn our focus to the matter of Railrick Blackwood and his treachery, she replies, turning her attention back to Ophelia. Ophelia's expression hardens at the mention of Railrick's name. Yes. He has betrayed not only Zeppeli but our people, she said, her voice taking on a steely edge. A few days pass and news of Ophelia's recovery spreads through Zeppeli. A sense of relief washes over the populace. That relief is short-lived as Tomo arrives back to Ophelia's manor with dire news. Duchess, I bring news of Blackwood's movements and he has amassed a formidable force and they march towards Zeppeli. Intent on attacking from all four bridges, Tomo says, finding the Duchess in gazebo of her garden. Ophelia is basking in the sun and wears a crisp white blouse adorned with delicate lace, cinched at the waist by a corset of supple black leather. Fitted trousers of the same hue, tucked into knee-high boots crafted from the finest materials. A long but billowing coat is draped over her shoulders to complete the ensemble, its deep burgundy hue a striking contrast against her fair complexion. Ophelia's brow furrows and she exchanges a weighted glance to her butler. Summon the Knight Commander Rogel Dorn and his captains at once, she orders, her voice steely. Within the hour and inside a large meeting room with knights, advisors, Naruto, Mio and Tomo were present at this gathering. My friends, Railrock Blackwood has begun to move against Zeppeli. I implore you all to stand firm. For the sake of our beloved city and its people, Ophelia says, addressing the assembly. My lady, we shall defend the bridges with our lives. Blackwood's forces will meet stiff resistance, Rogel says, the towering knight commander's arms folded. And what of the possibility of treachery from within? We cannot afford to let our guard down. Even amongst our own ranks, growls Knight Captain Aldwin, his voice gruff and laced with concern. Ophelia's gaze sweeps across the hall and Naruto could see that the Duchess is like fierce tiger, any who would betray us shall face swift justice. We have swept this manor for threats and dealt with them, she declares, her gaze sweeping across the room and looks to one of the maids. My lady, with the aid of Mio's keen insight and skills, we have successfully rooted out Blackwood's 2 spies from within the manor, Alara says, stepping forward and curtsying respectfully with Mio hiding her smile. It was a simple task and we have eliminated the traitors in your midst. Their loyalties clearly lay with Blackwood and his twisted ambitions, Mio says, inclining her head towards the Duchess. Your efforts have been invaluable. With the threat of treachery neutralized, we can focus our efforts on defending the city, Ophelia says, her expression softening slightly as she regards Mio. Another of Rogel's captains named Edwin Tully steps forward. How large a force has the treacherous Lord Blackwood amassed against us, he says, his piercing gaze sweeping across those assembled. I found that Railrock has gathered a force close to 2,000 men. A combination of his own soldiers, other traitors and hired mercenaries led by Sir Galen Drakewood. Apparently he is a renowned mercenary captain known for his brutal tactics and unwavering loyalty to the highest bidder, Tomo explains with her arms folded and her red scarf shifting a little. Murmurs of concern ripple through the room and Ophelia's brow furrowed ever so slightly. Galen Drakewood's reputation precedes him. He is a formidable foe, skilled in the art of siege warfare. We must not underestimate his abilities or the threat he poses to our defenses, she muses, her voice carrying a note of gravity. My lady, Drakewood's expertise is well known. His presence with Blackwood's forces complicates our defensive strategy, Rogel says, seriously. Then we must prepare for the worst. Reinforce the bridges and create choke points with our strongest warriors, Captain Ildwin says, his features set in a grim expression. Make no mistake. This battle will be fought with steel and blood. But we shall not falter. For the fate of Zeppeli and its people rests upon our shoulders. Prepare yourselves for the enemy approaches and we shall meet them with unwavering courage and steadfast resolve, Ophelia says, her expression resolute. We shall station our forces at each of the 4 bridges leading into the city to repel Blackwood's assault, Rogel says, nodding in agreement. If I may offer a suggestion, Tomo, Mio, and I could each take one of the bridges. This would free up your knights to focus their efforts on one bridge and defend the city itself, Naruto begins, his cerulean eyes alight with determination. Ophelia regards Naruto with a pensive expression. You propose. You and your comrades to bear the brunt of Blackwood's initial assault. She says, considering his words carefully. Ha ha ha. We are no strangers to battle. We can hold the bridges and blunt the enemy's advance. Allowing your knights to concentrate on securing the city's defenses, Tomo says, nodding to Mio, and the spider girl smiles with their eyes glowing. Ophelia's expression softens as she can see the power embedded in Tomo and Mio's eyes. Then I accept your offer. Commander Rogel, divide your forces accordingly. 1 bridge for each of our capable allies. While the bulk of our strength remains within the city walls, she says, a hint of gratitude flickering in her eyes. As you command, my lady. We shall make preparations at once. the Knight Commander says, inclining his head respectfully. Ophelia dismisses everyone as Naruto. Tomo and Mio search for Azane, finding her outside with Ghost amongst the flowers. Azane, Naruto calls out and Azane turns to him, I need to inform you of the plan. Tomo, Mio, and I have volunteered to take on 3 of the bridges leading into Zeppeli. We plan to bear the brunt of Blackwood's initial assault. Allowing the knights to focus their efforts on defending a single bridge in the city itself, he explains, taking her hands in his own. Azane's eyes widen and her grip on Naruto's hands tightening ever so slightly, but that's far too perilous, she protests, her voice laced with concern. Naruto offers her a reassuring smile and reaches up to tenderly brush a stray lock of silver hair from her face. Have faith, love. Our combined efforts will blunt the enemy's advance. Buying time for the city's defenses to be fortified, he says, but Azane searches his gaze, her brow furrowed with worry. But what if something were to happen to you? I couldn't bear the thought of losing you, Naruto, Azane whispers, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Naruto draws her into a tender embrace and his arms enveloping her slender frame. I will return to you, Azane. Trust me as I trust in the strength of our love, he murmurs, his voice a gentle vow. Azane melts into his embrace while drawing comfort from his warmth and the steadfast conviction in his words. I do trust you. Just promise me you'll be careful out there, she breathes, her fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. I swear it. Nothing shall keep me from returning to your arms when this battle is won, Naruto says, before pressing a tender kiss to her brow and his lips lingering against her skin. 2 more long days pass as Zeppeli prepares for Blackwood's force with scouts coming in of the city and civilians moving to bunkers underneath the lake. Azane and Zenith work with Zeppeli healers to create medical area while adventurers in the city are hired to join in the fight by a speech from Rogel that ignites many spirits. On the morning on the 3rd, Tomo and Mio find Naruto doing some sword swings with Gungar. The scouts have reported that Blackwood's forces are about an hour away. The city is abuzz with activity and the knights are scrambling to fortify the defenses, she informs him, her voice low and urgent. Then let us not waste any more time. Gather your supplies. We head for our posts, Naruto says, his azure eyes burning with determination. The 3 depart as Naruto heads to his room, but his gaze falls upon Azane, her lithe form curled upon the bed and cradling Ghost against her chest as she looks up at Naruto with eyes brimming with worry. Naruto crosses the room and kneels next to the bed and reaches out to stroke Ghost before the pup nuzzles into his touch. Azane, it's time for me to go, Naruto says, his voice laced with a quiet strength. Azane's fingers curl protectively around Ghost with her gaze never leaving Naruto's face. I know, but the thought still fills me with dread, she whispers, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Naruto's expression softens and he leans forward to press a tender kiss to her brow. Have faith, love. I will not falter. For the promise of returning to your embrace drives me forward, he murmurs against her skin. Azane nods and offering him a brave smile despite the fear lingering in her eyes. Naruto rises to his feet and unseals some clothes but also some armor pieces given to him by Sumiki from Rhyme Drift. Have Mio and Tomo headed out? Azane asks, but Naruto shakes his head. He dresses in baggy black cargo pants, black boots to his calves and white laces, a black form-fitting sleeveless shirt with silver accents that outline his muscles and a metal plate on his collar, a chainmail long-sleeve shirt and black gloves. Next, a pair of gauntlets crafted from burnished steel, their surfaces etched with intricate runes and sigils. Naruto slips them onto his hands, flexing his fingers, and then a set of greaves, their surfaces polished to a mirror-like sheen. Lastly, his sword holster that contains Gungar and his dagger as well. Sumiki gave me some nice armor pieces, Naruto says, turning back to Azane with a reassuring smile. Azane rises from the bed with Ghost cradled securely in her arms and crosses the room to stand before Naruto. Her free hand comes caress his cheek and her thumb tracing his handsome face. Promise me you'll come back to us, she whispers, her gaze imploring and ghost licking his chin. Naruto's arm encircles her slender waist to draw her close as he presses his brow to hers. I swear it, Azane. No force in this world could keep me from your side for long, he vows, his voice a passionate murmur. I love you, Azane says, as they break their embrace. I love you too, Naruto says, their fingers intertwined until the last possible moment. Azane's eyes shine with unshed tears, but her smile is one of unwavering faith in the man she loves. Naruto leaves the bedroom as Tomo and Mio were waiting with determined looks. Don't hold back, Naruto, Tomo said, her voice low but laced with a steely resolve. Yes. You are strong, Mio says, her raven tresses framing her striking features as they move through the manor to the outside. Yeah, Naruto says, but both could tell the blonde still has some linger doubts. Tomo. Mio. Go wild. I'm counting on you to make sure Zeppeli remains safe, he adds, his azure eyes burning with determination. They reach the outside as Tomo presses a gentle kiss to Naruto's cheek with a tender gesture, her lips lingering for a fleeting moment. Mio follows suit and her lips brush his opposite cheek in a wordless gesture of affection, before both depart from him and Naruto heads for the stables. Mio. You heard what Naruto said. Naruto wants us to fight for him, Tomo says, as they race along the roofs. Yes. I'm trembling with excitement, Mio says, her cheeks red. We'll show Viscount Blackwood's mistake for fighting Naruto, albeit through Zeppeli, Tomo says, grinning as the pair part to head for the east and south bridges. Naruto reaches the stable and searches his black steed Liam, who whickers a greeting as Naruto approaches. The young man reaches out and runs his gauntleted fingers through the horse's sleek mane as he prepared to saddle him. Naruto. A moment, a voice says, and turns to see Duchess Ophelia, her coat billowing and a cane in her hand. Of course, Duchess. How may I be of service? Naruto says, inclining his head respectfully towards Ophelia. You and your companions had no other obligation than to aid in my recovery. Yet you chose to stand beside my people, defending Zeppeli against the treacherous forces of Lord Blackwood. Such loyalty and valor deserve recognition, Ophelia says, her eyes shining with a depth of emotion. She motions for Naruto to kneel and he did so without hesitation, lowering himself to one knee before the Duchess as Ophelia steps forward. Such courage and dedication are rare virtues and they deserve recognition. Ophelia begins but pauses for a moment and chooses her words, Naruto Uzumaki. Be without fear in the face of your enemies. For true bravery lies in upholding what is right, even if it leads to your death. Seek the truth no matter how arduous the path and safeguard the helpless. That is your oath, Ophelia recites and pauses again, her gaze sweeping over Naruto's form. Ophelia's hand lashes out with a swift motion and backhand Naruto across his face. The unexpected blow stings, but Naruto remains steadfast, his jaw clenched as he meets her gaze unflinchingly. That is so you remember it. Rise, Naruto Uzumaki, an honorary knight of Zeppeli, Ophelia said, her voice carrying a hint of approval. Naruto rises to his feet and his eyes burn with renewed determination. He inclines his head respectfully towards Ophelia. I am humbled by this honor, my lady. You have my solemn vow that I shall fight with every ounce of my strength to defend Zeppeli and its people, Naruto says, his voice thick with gratitude. I have faith in you, Naruto. Now go, Ophelia says, reaching out to place a hand upon Naruto's shoulder. Naruto turns and mounts Liam as the black steed whines, as if sensing the gravity of the task ahead. Naruto gathers the reins in his gauntleted hands and casts one last glance towards Ophelia, before spurring Liam into motion and riding out the stables toward the bridge he will defend. The pair make their way through the streets of Zeppeli, the hooves of Liam's powerful legs echoing against the cobblestones. They soon reach the northern gate and see the northern bridge, a vast structure spanning nearly 3 miles across the glittering waters. "Steady, Liam," Naruto murmurs, patting the horse's muscular neck. The bridge itself is a marvel of engineering, its sturdy stone arches standing resolute against the currents below, and its width, a mere quarter-mile across, and leaves little room for error. The knights and adventurers guarding the entrance nod respectfully to Naruto, and their expressions were grim, betraying the gravity of the situation that lay beyond the city's walls. "Good luck. We won't be much help, but we'll pray for you," one of the guards said, his voice gruff but sincere. Naruto acknowledges the well wishes with a solemn nod, his gaze fixed ahead as they passes through the gates. The towering structures closes behind them with a resounding thud and sealing off Zeppeli from the world beyond. Liam's hooves clatter against the smooth stone of the bridge, the rhythmic sound echoing across the vast expanse of water. Naruto tightens his grip on the reins, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. "Stay alert, Liam," Naruto murmurs, leaning forward to whisper in Liam's ear. Naruto rides about halfway across the bridge and pulls the reins, signaling Liam to halt, and he comes to a stop with a soft whinny, patting the stallion's neck and his eyes scanning the lake that stretches out on either side. "The danger is coming, my friend," Naruto says, resting his forearms on the pommel of the saddle. Liam tosses his head as if in agreement, and Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at the steed's equine wisdom. The tranquil waters stretch out before them, reflecting the brilliant hues of the morning sun as Naruto inhales deeply to savor the crisp, clean air that carries the scent of pine and wildflowers. 30 minutes later does Naruto's reverie end at the faint echo of drums in the distance. His brow furrows as he reaches into the saddlebag and retrieves a spyglass, before extending the brass instrument and peering through the lens. He sees nothing at first but the rolling hills and verdant meadows of the valley, as then, a glint of sunlight caught his eye and he adjusts the focus of the spyglass. "They're here," Naruto says, and Liam whinnies. Their ranks were formed in a compact formation, 15 to 20 men deep and 5 men in armor wide, with armed mercenaries interspersed among them. The synchronous beat of the drums reverberate through the air, providing a steady cadence for their measured advance. Naruto's gaze sweeps over the enemy ranks, his keen eyes picking out the subtle nuances that set the mercenaries apart from the regular troops. Their movements were more fluid, their grips on their weapons more relaxed yet purposeful. These were not mere conscripts but battle-hardened warriors who had traded their souls for coin. A snarling wolf's head and its fangs bared in a menacing snarl. The emblem of Viscount Blackwood, Naruto thought, his grip tightening on the spyglass. Liam senses his rider's tension and shifts restlessly beneath him, but Naruto reaches down and pats the horse's neck in a soothing gesture. Naruto then slides the spyglass back into the saddlebag and straightens in his saddle but forms a tiger hand sign. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," Naruto declares, and 50 clones, amped by his aura, pop to life in front of him and spread out to form a defensive line across the bridge. Music. "Take Me Away," Shield of Faith Remix, Globus. On the enemy side is the hired mercenary knight Galen Drakewood, riding behind the formation with a confident swagger and unmistakable aura of danger, like a predator stalking its prey, his horse's hooves striking the ground in a rhythmic cadence. He is a rugged man in his mid-30s, possessing a chiseled jawline and piercing green eyes that seems to smolder with a mixture of cunning and ferocity. His chestnut hair is cropped short, and a thin scar etched across his nose, a memento from a past battle. He wears a dark gambeson long vest with a long-sleeve white tunic and silver gauntlets, black trousers and sturdy leather chausses that extended to his knees, where they meet his well-worn boots and greaves over that, lastly one shoulder knight cape having the Blackwood insignia on it. Soldiers of fortune. Viscount Blackwood has promised us riches beyond our wildest dreams if we breach the defenses of Zeppeli. But it is not merely gold that awaits us. It is glory, and the kind that will echo through the ages. Galen bellows, his voice carrying across his force. A thunderous roar erupts from only the mercenaries, their weapons raises high in a display of fervor. Galen's lips curl into a predatory grin and his eyes alight with the thrill of battle. Make no mistake, my boys. This will be no easy feat. The cowards of Zeppeli have fortified their city, hiding behind their walls like rats in a burrow. But we are not mere men. We are the spearhead of Viscount Blackwood's wrath, and our blades shall pierce their defenses. Galen continues, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. Another roar rises from the ranks, with the mercenaries feeding off Galen's fiery words, and the knight raises a gauntleted fist to silence the clamor. 3 other forces march on Zeppeli, but their arrogance blinds them. For they believe their watery fortifications to be impregnable. But we shall the first to show them the folly of their ways. When our blades have carved a path through their ranks, Viscount Blackwood's armies shall pour forth like a relentless tide, Galen declares, and his lips twist into a cruel sneer. The mercenaries howl their approval, and their weapons clashing against their armor in a cacophony of bloodlust. Galen's eyes blaze with a mixture of greed and battle lust, his fingers tightening around the reins of his horse. For glory and gold, my boys. Forward and let the lake run red with the blood of our foes. Galen roars, his voice booming across the force as he spurs his steed forward. A thunderous cheer erupts from the mercenary ranks, their weapons raised high in a display of bloodlust. The rhythmic beat of drums propel them forward, their boots pounding against the earth in a steady cadence while the soldiers are quiet. They reach the bridge and begin to march on it, but a scout peers through a spyglass. Captain Drakewood. You need to see this. He calls out, his voice tinged with urgency. What is it, Rawl? Speak quickly, Galen says, his brow furrowed as the scout approaches and pulling his horse to a stop. Take a look, sir. Across the bridge, Rawl says, handing Galen the spyglass. Galen raises the spyglass to his eye, adjusting the focus until the distant figures comes into view. Dozens of blonde-haired figures stand in defensive formations across the bridge, and at their center, astride a black horse, is a lone figure and a young man with sun-kissed hair but also piercing azure blue eyes. What sorcery is this? Galen mutters, his fingers tightening around the spyglass. He lowers the instrument with a chuckle. It seems our foes have deployed tricks of their own. But fear not, for we are the scourge that Viscount Blackwood has unleashed upon this land, and no mere illusion shall deter us from our path. Galen shouts, his gaze hardening as he regarded his men. The mercenaries roar their approval, with their weapons clashing against their armor in a deafening cacophony, but Galen raises a hand to silence the clamor. Advance in a wedge formation. Keep your shields locked and your blades at the ready. We shall plow through their ranks like a battering ram. Leave naught but corpses in our wake, Galen declares, his eyes narrowing as he studied their formations. The mercenaries but also soldiers obey, as their discipline and training evident as they form up in the specified formation, while Galen draws his sword with the blade gleaming in the sun and raises it high. For glory and gold, Galen bellows, pointing his sword forward. Naruto's eyes narrow as he watches Galen's forces advance across the bridge, their formation tightening as they quicken their pace. The rhythmic beat of drums echo across the water, propelling the mercenaries forward with a steady cadence. They're picking up speed, Naruto murmurs, his grip tightening on the reins. The horse whinnies softly as if understanding, and Naruto turns his attention to the clones stationed along the bridge. 3 of you, front and center, Naruto calls out, his voice ringing with authority. 3 clones break formation and approach Naruto with their movements mirroring his own eerie precision. Get ready with the water dragon missile jutsu, Naruto instructs, his eyes fixed on the advancing mercenaries, and the clones nod in unison. The 3 clones rush forward, and their hands blurring through the intricate and long chain of seals required for the powerful water technique, Suiryuden no Jutsu. They shout in unison, their voices echoing across the bridge. 3 massive water dragons rise from the depths of the lake, their yellow eyes glowing with ethereal power. The dragons rear back, and their serpentine bodies coiling with raw energy, before surging forward with tremendous force. Brace yourselves. Shields locked. Galen shouts, his voice ringing out in a commanding bellow as the mercenaries falter their advance and their eyes widening in disbelief as the water dragons bore down upon them. The mercenaries and soldiers form a tight defensive formation with their shields raised, creating a formidable wall of steel and wood, but even their disciplined ranks could not withstand the sheer force of the water dragon's onslaught. The dragons slam into them with enough force to shatter shields and send men tumbling like ragdolls, crashing against the bridge with a thunderous roar. Ah! A few shout, as bodies were flung into the lake, their heavy armor dragging them down as they plunge into the depths of the lake. The once orderly ranks of the mercenaries and soldiers were reduced to chaos, with men flailing in the water and struggling against the weight of their sodden garments and equipment. Galen grits his teeth with his steed rearing in panic from the shockwaves of the impacts. Steady, you dogs! Reform the lines and advance! Galen roars, his voice cutting through the cacophony. They regain their footing with their shields raised once more as they push forward and their blades glinting in the sun. Let's see how you handle this, Naruto mutters, his voice laced with determination. He draws his longsword Gunger with the blade glinting in the sun and spurs Liam forward into a gallop. The clones sprints alongside Naruto with their hands blurring through the seals for the Shadow Shuriken Jutsu. A barrage of shuriken materialize with their razor-sharp edges glinting as they hurtle towards the enemies. Scatter! Galen bellows, his voice cutting through the din of battle. The mercenaries and soldiers react swiftly to break formation and throw up shields or deflect the shuriken raining down upon them. The projectiles slice through armor and flesh, eliciting cries of agony from those unfortunate enough to be caught in their path. Naruto thunders forward on Liam as his hooves pound against the stone bridge while Galen's eyes narrow, his blade raised in a defensive stance as he barks orders to his men. Brace for impact! Galen shouts, his voice cutting through the din of battle. The mercenaries brace themselves with their shields locked in a formidable wall as Liam barrels towards them. Naruto's clones flank him with their longswords gripped tightly in their hands and ready to engage the enemy forces. Naruto crashes into the formation with Liam rears up and his powerful front legs lashing out with deadly force. A mercenary is caught in the path of Liam's hooves, the impact sending him crumpling to the ground with a sickening crunch. For Zeppeli! Naruto roars, his blade arcing through the air with lethal precision and slicing into a mercenary. The mercenaries in the front ranks scatters with their shields raised to deflect the vicious swings of Naruto's longsword. Metal clashes against metal, the ringing of steel reverberating through the air as Naruto's blade finds its mark, biting deep into armor and flesh. You'll pay for your insolence. Galen snarls, his blade flashing as he engages one of Naruto's clones. The clone parry Galen's strike with practiced ease, their blades locked in a deadly dance of steel and sinew while the other clones were embroiled in their own battles, their swords clashing against the mercenaries, blades in a symphony of violence. Naruto twists in the saddle and Liam pivoting with the grace of a dancer as he lashes his back legs out at another mercenary. Naruto's blade carves through the air, slicing through the soldier's armor as if it were parchment, eliciting a guttural scream of agony but feels memories from his clones. Your lives are forfeit. Galen bellows, his sword disengaging from Naruto's clone with a violent twist and taking off his head. The bridge trembles beneath their feet and the battle raging on with unrelenting ferocity as the two sides clash in a deadly dance of steel and blood. Naruto sees Galen taking out a few clones but flicks through a set of hand seals and swaps with a clone using Kawarimi, inhaling to use total concentration breathing. Galen's eyes widen as Naruto's blade is a mere blur as it cut through the ranks of his mercenaries. Men cry out in agony as Naruto's longsword slices through their armor and their bodies crumpling to the ground. Insolent whelp! Galen roars, spurring his steed forward to meet Naruto's leaping charge. Their blades clash with a resounding clang and the force of their impact sending a shockwave rippling across the bridge. Galen's eyes widen as Naruto's strike dislodges him from his saddle, sending him tumbling to the ground with a grunt of exertion. The mercenary captain regains his footing with his blade firmly in his grip as he eyes the blonde with a mixture of respect and fury. Not bad. But it'll take more than a few tricks to best me, Galen growls, his chest heaving with each ragged breath. Naruto twirls his longsword with one hand and the blade catching the sun's rays, casting a brief glimmer across the bridge. I'm just getting started, Naruto shot back, gripping Gungar tightly. Galen's eyes narrow and with a guttural roar, launches himself forward and his blade slicing through the air in a deadly arc. Naruto parries the strike with ease and their blades locking together as they stare each other down, their faces mere inches apart. Your choice to face me will be your undoing, Galen snarls, his muscles straining as he pushes against Naruto's blade. Naruto is pushed back and his feet sliding across the stone bridge, leaving twin trails in his wake but doesn't rise to the taunt. Naruto disengages from the blade lock with a sudden twist of his wrist and Gungar whirls in a graceful arc as he launches a series of lightning-fast strikes. Galen backpedals and his blade a blur as he deflects each blow, his boots scraping against the stone with every step. The clang of steel against steel echo across the bridge, while punctuated by the grunts and growls of the combatants. He's strong, Naruto thought, feinting to the left and his blade whistling past Galen's ear as the mercenary captain leans back as he narrowly avoids the strike. Before Galen could counter does Naruto pivot on his heel, his blade sweeping low in a vicious arc and aiming for the captain's legs. Galen leaps back with his eyes wide as Naruto's strike slices through the air where his legs had been mere moments ago. He lands in a crouch and his blade holding defensively as he studies his opponent with newfound respect. Impressive. But let's see how you fare against this, Galen admits, his voice laced with grudging admiration. Galen charges forward with a roar and his blade a whirlwind of steel as he unleashed a flurry of strikes, each one imbued with the weight of his years of experience. Naruto deflects the blows with practiced skill, his footwork fluid as he dances around Galen's assault, his blade a blur of parries and ripostes. Naruto and Galen clash in a deadly dance with their blades singing as they exchange a dizzying array of strikes and counterstrikes, neither willing to yield an inch of ground. Galen suddenly gains the upper hand and his blade slicing through Naruto's defenses with brutal efficiency. You're outmatched, Galen taunts, his blade slicing into Naruto's shirt and a second shallow cut to his cheek, crimson droplets running down his face. Galen rushes in and Naruto grunts, parrying the blows with increasing difficulty but the mercenary feints. He lashes with his boot and aims a vicious kick at Naruto's midsection and the blonde's eyes widen as he leans back to narrowly avoid the blow. Galen presses his advantage into a flurry of strikes that forces Naruto onto the defensive, his blade weaving an intricate web of steel that threatened to ensnare the young man. You can't beat me, Galen shouts, as another strike slips through and biting into Naruto's thigh and the blonde's footing faltering momentarily. Galen's fist lashes out and catches Naruto squarely in the jaw, staggering Naruto and Gungar clatters on the ground. Finish him, one of the mercenaries bellow, launching himself at the staggering Naruto and his blade raised for the killing blow. A feral snarl escapes Naruto's lips as he unleashes his bluish-white aura and blocks the mercenary's strike with gauntlet into a palm strike, creating a shockwave rippling across the bridge. The air crackles with electricity and the stone beneath their feet trembles as if in reverence while the mercenary flies off the bridge. Another mercenary goes for Naruto as goes for his sword but Gungar sings through the air and a mere blur of steel as it cleaved through the mercenary's armor and flesh with ease. The man's eyes widen in shock, his mouth agape in a silent scream as his body is neatly bisected and the two halves falling to the ground with a sickening thud. Impossible, Galen breathes, his eyes wide with disbelief as he witnesses the display of sheer power. Naruto turns his gaze towards the mercenary captain and his aura pulsating with unbridled energy that sent shivers down Galen's spine. The other mercenaries and soldiers falter with their blades wavering as they stare at the broken form of their fallen mercenary. Fear flickers across some of their faces and their confidence shaken by the raw power Naruto has unleashed. Don't falter, you cowards. He's just one. We are many. Attack. Galen roars, his words laced with a hint of desperation. The mercenaries rally and emboldened by their captain's command and their blades raised as they charged towards Naruto with a guttural war cry. The first mercenary reaches him and her blade slices through the air with lethal intent. Naruto's sword meets the strike with a resounding clang, the force of the impact sending tremors down her arm. He twists his wrist and disengages from the blade lock and launches a vicious counterattack, his blade a blur of steel and radiant energy. Arg! The mercenary cries, her eyes wide as Gungar has carves through her defenses and slicing through armor and flesh with ease. She stumbles back and clutches at the grievous wound in her torso as her life's blood pours from the gaping gash. Another mercenary charges in with his greatsword cleaving through the air with the weight of a battering ram. Naruto pivots and his blade weaves an intricate dance as he parries the powerful strikes, his aura crackling with each impact. You're a demon. The mercenary snarls, his face contorted in a mask of rage and fear. Naruto's response is Gungar darting forward in a lightning-fast thrust that pierces the mercenary's armor with ease. The man gasps with his eyes widening in shock as Naruto's blade slides effortlessly through his flesh and puncturing his heart. The mercenary crumples to the ground with his greatsword clattering against the stone as his lifeblood pooled around him. Naruto withdraws his blade and flicks the crimson droplets from its edge with a casual flick of his wrist. Who's next? Naruto says, his eyes scanning the mercenaries and soldiers with a predatory gaze. Galen's grip tightens on his blade and his jaw clenching as he studies the young man before him with newfound trepidation. That is aura, Galen thought, burning curiosity about Naruto's true age and the source of his remarkable power. Galen releases a fierce battle cry and charges forward as his blade slices through the air with lethal intent. Their blades clash in a shower of sparks, the force of the impact sending tremors down Galen's arms and grits his teeth, his muscles straining as he pushes against Naruto's blade. Could he be some ancient sorcerer hidden behind a mask of youth? Or perhaps a mythical being? A force of nature cloaked in human form? Galen thought, blocking a strike from Naruto. Galen believes no ordinary youth could possess such strength and skill with a blade, but let alone the ability to wield an aura. Who are you? Galen snarls, his face contorted with rage as he glares at Naruto. Spittle flies from his lips and his knuckles turn white as he grips his sword with a vice-like intensity. The mercenary captain's eyes burn with fury, his gaze smoldering with a mixture of respect and trepidation. Veins bulge on Galen's neck as he struggles to rein in his anger. Answer me, damn you. He snarls, his chest heaving with each ragged breath. Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, the blonde says, his aura pulsating with energy. Galen's eyes narrow and with a sudden twist of his wrist, disengaged from the blade lock and launching a series of lightning-fast strikes. You must be some ancient sorcerer. Hidden behind a mask of youth, Galen grunts, his blade whistling past Naruto's ear. I'm no sorcerer, Naruto says, responding with a flurry of strikes that forces Galen back and his boots scraping against the stone as he retreats. Galen's eyes widens as Naruto's aura flares and the bluish-white energy crackles around him like a raging storm. Naruto launches himself forward with a roar and his blade a mere blur as he unleashes a devastating barrage of strikes. Rokurin, he thought, as Galen's defenses buckled under the onslaught and his armor denting with his flesh being nicked by Naruto's blade. What manner of being are you? Galen pants, his blade in a defensively stance as he studies Naruto, but a faint purple aura begins to emanate from the mercenary's body and casting an eerie glow. You're not ordinary. That much is clear. But do not think for a moment that your powers intimidate me, Galen growls, his voice laced with a mixture of respect and trepidation. Nor does yours, Naruto says, his own aura flaring in response to Galen's challenge. Galen's aura intensifies and the purple hue deepens as he draws upon the depths of his experience. It took me 20 years to unlock the secrets of the aura. 20 years of dedication, sacrifice and unwavering determination, he proclaims, his voice resonating with the weight of his conviction. Galen charges forward with a guttural roar and his blade trailing a wisp of purple energy in its wake. Naruto braces himself and his own aura pulsating with raw power as he prepares to meet the mercenary captain's assault. Their blades clash in a shower of thunderous sparks, the force of the impact sending tremors through their bodies. He's an aura user, Darren Lothar thought, hiding amongst the dead to avoid Naruto's clones. Galen's aura crackles against Naruto's as the two energy fields collide in a display of raw and unbridled power, before Galen unleashes a flurry of strikes. Naruto meets his assault head-on, their blades clashing in a deadly dance of steel and energy, each blow reverberating across the bridge like thunder. The force of their auras colliding sends shockwaves rippling outward, disturbing the very air around them. Several were blown off their feet, tumbling helplessly over the edge of the bridge and plunging into the churning waters below. Their cries of terror were swiftly drowned out by the deafening roar of Naruto and Galen's clash. "You'll pay for that," Galen snarls, his face contorted in a mask of fury as he redoubles his efforts and his blade a blur of purple energy while Naruto parries his strikes. Their blades lock together and the air crackling with raw power as their auras clashing in a display of unbridled might. The remaining mercenaries watch in horror as their captain is driven back and their confidence shaken by the raw power on display. Some turn and flee with their armor clattering as they scramble for safety, unwilling to face the wrath of these two titans. "Cowards!" Galen bellows, his voice dripping with contempt as he witnesses his men retreating. Naruto's clones give chase with their blades flashing in the afternoon sun as they pursue the fleeing mercenaries. The sound of steel clashing against steel echo across the bridge, but also punctuated by the cries of the wounded and the dying. Naruto pays no heed to the fleeing mercenaries, his focus solely on the formidable opponent before him. Galen's eyes burn with fury and his aura pulsating in raw power while both clash. "You think you're so clever. But experience trumps youthful arrogance every time," Galen snarls, his blade locking with Naruto once again as both push for dominance. "Now's my chance," Darren thought, seeing Naruto's blade deflect Galen as the arrogant young noble grips his short sword. Galen feints to the left with his blade slicing through the air in a lethal arc, but Naruto parries the strike, his boots scraping against the stone as he skids back to avoid Galen's follow-up swing. It is in that moment that Darren strikes from behind, driving his short sword towards Naruto's lower back, and the blonde's eyes widen when the blade pierces through his chainmail, biting deep into his side and blood running down his backside. A sharp hiss escapes Naruto's lips and he staggers forward with his grip faltering on his longsword. "This for trying to stand against me," Darren shouts, as Naruto's releases a lengthy breath in pain. "Foolish. Did you really think I'd play fair? Good work, Lothar," Galen sneers, his blade poised to strike. Naruto's aura flares, the bluish-white energy crackles around him like a raging storm and with a roar, twists around to slice off Darren's right hand to his wrist. "Ah!" Darren cries, stumbling back and falling on his rear with a pained cry. He sees the ethereal image of a dragon and its jaws agape in a deafening roar. The ghostly visage seems to manifest from the very depths of Naruto's power, its piercing eyes fixed upon Darren with an intensity that chills his very soul. A pathetic whimper escapes Darren's lips and he scurries away with his face contorted in abject fear. "Daddy! Save me!" he squeals, his voice high-pitched and trembling. Galen's eyes narrow as he watches Darren flee and the mercenary captain's lips curl into a sneer of disgust. "Coward!" Galen spits, turning his attention back to Naruto as the blonde has pulled the sword free. "I would be inclined to agree," Naruto says, his aura pulsating with raw power. Galen presses his advantage that Darren has given him and unleashing a flurry of strikes that forces Naruto onto the defensive. Galen's blade nicks Naruto's body with each exchange, opening shallow cuts that stained his clothes with crimson. Naruto's breath grows ragged with his movements slowing as the injury to his side taking its toll while "You're faltering," Galen taunts, his blade whistling by the blonde's right upper arm but Naruto sends Galen back. Naruto touches and uses his aura to stem the flow of blood from his wound. Good thing Sumiki taught me to do this with aura. But this is just a stopgap. I need to end this, he thought, gripping Gungar tightly. Impossible. Galen shouts but Naruto seizes the moment of shock. Naruto launches a vicious counterattack with his blade a blur of steel and radiant energy. Galen backpedal with his eyes wide in disbelief as he struggles to deflect Naruto's relentless onslaught. How? Galen grunts, his blade clashing against Naruto's with a resounding clang. Galen grits his teeth as his muscles were screaming while he parries Naruto's strikes, his blade seemingly to move with a mind of its own and weaving an intricate web of steel that threatens to ensnare the mercenary captain. Impressive. But it will take more than tricks to best me, Galen admits, his voice laced with grudging respect. He unleashes a devastating barrage of strikes with his blade trailing wisps of purple energy in its wake. Naruto's eyes widen and he leans back, narrowly avoiding a strike that would have cleaved him in two and his side burning. Galen presses his advantage with his blade a blur of steel and energy as he forces Naruto back, step by step and the stone beneath their feet trembling from the force of their clash and the air crackling with raw power. You fight with the fury of a demon, Galen growls, his face contorted with exertion as he pushes against Naruto's blade. And you fight like a wolf, Naruto shot back, as he twists his wrist and disengages from the blade lock once again. Naruto lashes out with his boot in a sudden feint and aims a vicious kick at Galen's midsection. The mercenary captain grunts as his breath escapes in a rush from Naruto's blow connected with his gut. Naruto seizes the opportunity and launches a series of lightning-fast strikes with Gungar a mere blur as forces Galen back but the mercenary captain hears what seems like steam escaping. Naruto sucks in a deep breath once again and endures the pair, Hekareki Issen, Rokurin. He shouts, his aura flaring with intensity, rattling the very air around them. What the? Galen thought, as Naruto moves in a blur of motions once again. Naruto moves like a chaotic lightning and Gungar slashing at Galen in a dizzying flurry of strikes. 6 precise cuts land on the mercenary captain's body, seemingly all at once and the force of the blows staggering him. Huh, Galen growls, his eyes wide with disbelief as his arrogance has been shattered by Naruto's relentless assault, his strikes precise and devastating. Naruto appears above Galen in a blur and his blade crackling with energy, Uzumaki Ryu, Ryutsuzan. Naruto shouts, his aura flaring with intensity. Naruto unleashes a devastating strike that slashes through Galen from the crown of his head to his groin, a crimson spray of blood erupting from the deep wound. The mercenary captain's eyes flicker in shock with his lips parting in a silent gasp of disbelief. Impossible, Galen manages to utter, his voice strained as he crashes to the ground and his back slamming against the hard bridge with a sickening thud. The once formidable mercenary captain lays motionless with his body broken and lifeless, his eyes staring blankly at the sky above. Naruto staggers back as his aura fades and the wounds on his body reopen, the pain searing through his flesh. He grimaces and his grip on his sword wavers as he struggles to remain standing but bumps into Liam that nudges him gently, offering support and Naruto gratefully leans against the horse's sturdy frame. Thanks Liam, Naruto whispers, as the sound thundering hooves echoes across the bridge. He looks to see a contingent of Zeppeli knights riding towards them. Their armor gleaming in the sunlight and their banners fluttered in the breeze. Sir Naruto, are you alright? One of the knights calls out, reining in his horse. Naruto nods with his grip tightening on Liam's mane, I'm fine. Galen Drakewood, he's been dealt with, he rasps, his voice strained and pointing. The knight's gazes fall upon Galen's lifeless form and a murmur of awe but disbelief ripples through their ranks. You have our gratitude. We will send our forces to further secure the bridge for another attack that may come, the knight said, inclining his head respectfully. Naruto acknowledges the praise with a weary nod, his gaze lingering on Galen's body. The battle has been hard fought but he emerged victorious, protecting Zeppeli from the mercenary captain's attack. The knights dismount to assess the situation as Naruto continues to lean against Liam, allowing the stallion's comforting presence to ground him. Naruto groans softly a little after sunset while lying on his stomach in his room inside Duchess Ophelia's mansion. The bandages were wrapped around his lower back and were a stark reminder of the intense battle he had earlier that day. The soft candlelight cast flickering shadows across the room and creating a warm but intimate atmosphere. The door creaks open and Azane slips inside with her gentle footsteps accompanied by the soft pattering of Ghost trotting at her side. Naruto's eyes flutter open and he offers a weary smile with his head on his crossed arms as he spots his companions. How are you feeling, Naruto? Azane asks, her voice laced with concern as she approaches the bed and lifts Ghost up. He wags his tail and nuzzles against Naruto's outstretched hand. Like I've been trampled by a herd of wild boars but I'll be okay, Naruto chuckles, his fingers gently scratching behind Ghost's ears. You fought bravely today. The knights told Duchess Ophelia and the others about your actions and many were in awe of your skill, Azane says, coming to lay next to him and her lips curving into a warm smile. I did what was necessary to protect Zeppeli. The mercenaries and Blackwood solidars were a threat and needed to be stopped, Naruto says, his cheeks flushing slightly at the praise. Your actions were nothing short of heroic. You put your life on the line to defend Zeppeli and its people, Azane insists, her eyes shining with admiration and love. Naruto's gaze drifts to the flickering candles with his mind replaying the intense clash of blades as Azane caresses his cheek and the adrenaline that courses through his veins. It was a tough fight. Galen was a formidable opponent but his arrogance ultimately led to his downfall, he admits, his voice growing somber. The knights have secured the bridge and keep watch in case of other attacks. With Galen's defeat, Blackwood's plot is broken, Azane says, her expression solemn. A comfortable silence falls between them but punctuated by the soft crackle of the candles and Ghost's content snuffles. Naruto's fingers absent-mindedly stroke the wolf pup's fur and he is drawing solace from the simple act. You should rest. Your wounds need time to heal and I'm sure the others will want to celebrate your victory once you've regained your strength. My magic hasn't fully recovered yet but once it does, I'll fully heal you, Azane said, sitting up and rising from the bed. Naruto nods and his eyes are heavy with fatigue. What of the other bridges? He asks, his voice laced with curiosity. Tomo and Mio defended their bridges with ease. The knights handled the fourth lead by Commander Dorn, Azane says, her expression bright. Where are Tomo and Mio now? Naruto asks, his brow furrowed slightly. Duchess Ophelia sent them to capture Viscount Railrick Blackwood, Azane explains, looking over his bandages. Good. He needs to answer for his crimes, Naruto says, his jaw clenching at the mention of the treacherous nobleman. Ghost lets out a soft whine after sensing Naruto's shift in mood but Azane reaches out and gently strokes the wolf pup's fur with a reassuring smile. Try not to worry about that now. Tomo and Mio are more than capable of handling Blackwood. Your focus should be on recovering, Azane said, her voice soothing. You're right, Naruto says, exhaling slowly and allowing the tension to leave his body. You've done your part, love. Now it's time to let your wounds mend, Azane says, her eyes shining with admiration. The soft glow of the candles cast a warm and comforting light over the room as Naruto feels a sense of peace wash over him. He faced a formidable foe and emerged victorious but the battle had taken its toll. He settles among the pillows with his muscles aching with fatigue and resting his head on his folded arms. Rest now, love. Let the worries of the day fade away and allow the soothing embrace of slumber to claim you, Azane murmurs, her fingers tenderly brushing aside the strands of hair from his forehead. Naruto's eyes flutter close and a faint smile tugs at his lips as Azane begins to sing a soft but lilting melody. Her voice is like a gentle caress, soothing his weary soul and lulling him into a state of tranquility. Each note is infused with a deep, abiding love, wrapping him in a cocoon of warmth and security. Ghost lets out a content sigh and nuzzling closer to Naruto's side, his soft fur brushing against the blonde's arm. The pup's presence combined with Azane's serenade, create a sense of contentment that envelopes him like a comforting blanket. As Azane's melodic voice fills the room, does Naruto feel the tension and strain of the day's battle gradually melt away. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows across the walls, adding to the intimate but tranquil ambiance. Azane's gaze never leaves Naruto's face, her eyes shining with a love so pure and unwavering that it seems to emanate from her very being. Each note she sings is a testament to the depth of her affection, a soothing balm for his weary soul. Naruto's breathing deepens and his muscles relaxed, the exhaustion of the day's events finally catching up with him. Azane's voice envelopes him like a gentle embrace, guiding him into the realm of dreams, where the burdens of battle could not follow. Naruto surrenders to the soothing lullaby, knowing that when he awakes, his beloved Azane would be by his side. Naruto's eyes flutter open and he blinks slowly, adjusting to the soft morning light filtering through the bedroom curtains. He shifts slightly on his stomach with a dull ache reminding him of the wounds. His gaze falls upon the familiar sight of Tomo and Mio kneeling next to the bed, their expressions a mix of love and admiration. Tomo's red eyes sparkle with pride as she leans forward. "We've heard how you defended the bridge and defeated Galen Drakewood," she said, a hint of awe in her tone. "Indeed. We also heard Duchess Ophelia made you an honorary knight of Zeppeli," Mio adds, her lips curving into a soft smile. "Yeah, it was before I headed to the bridge," Naruto affirms with a faint smile tugging at his lips and shifts slightly. "Were you able to capture Railrick?" he adds, wincing as the movement aggravated his wounds. "We did. That treacherous snake. Along with his associate Damien but also Edric Lothar. They were preparing to flee," Tomo says, her expression hardening but nods firmly. The mention of the Lothar's name causes Naruto's brow to furrow and a flash of anger crosses his features. "Lothar. His asshat of a son stabbed me in the back on the bridge," he mutters, his jaw clenching. Mio's expression hardens as her eyes flicker with a hint of satisfaction. "Ah yes. Darren Lothar. That treacherous worm is locked away," she said, her voice laced with disdain. "When they captured him, he was missing a hand and screaming about a blonde monster who had inflicted such a grievous wound upon him," Tomo says, her lips curving into a grim smile. "He did encounter the business end of my blade after he stabbed me," Naruto says, as he couldn't help but chuckle. "Serves the bastard right. He's fortunate to have escaped with his life," Mio says, her eyes glinting with amusement. "I take no pleasure in maiming others, but Darren made his choice when he aligned himself with Railrick's schemes," Naruto says, his expression sobering. "Your actions were justified. Darren and his ilk brought this upon themselves through their greed and disregard for the lives of innocent people," Mio says, her gaze softening some. "I just hope Darren's punishment serves as a warning to others who might consider betraying Zeppeli. The people deserve better than to be terrorized by those sworn to protect them," Naruto murmurs, exhaling softly and shifting a little. Arrogance is a trait shared by many of these so-called noble lords. They believe themselves above the common folk. Untouchable in their ivory towers, Tomi says, her distaste evident. "But you've shown them the error of their ways, Naruto. Your actions have sent a message that their tyranny will not be tolerated," Mio says, nodding in agreement. A faint smile curves Naruto's lips. "It wasn't just me. We all played our part in defending Zeppeli," he said, his gaze shifting between the two women. Tomo's expression softens and she reaches out to give Naruto's hand a gentle squeeze. True, but your valor on the bridge was exceptional. Duchess Ophelia was right to honor you as a knight of Zeppeli, she insists, smiling softly. Naruto's cheeks flush slightly at the praise, but he nods in acknowledgement. I'm humbled by the recognition, he admits, both Tomo and Mio knowing that he still grapples with how Konoha hurt him. And that's what makes you worthy of such an honor, Naruto. Your dedication to doing what's right. Regardless of personal gain or recognition, Mio affirms, smiling warmly. The door creaks open and Azane enter the room with Ghost in her arms, accompanied by Zenith and Yuri. The quartet make their way towards Naruto's bedside, their expressions a mix of relief and admiration. Kremph. Sir Naruto. You've proven your worth. Your valor on the bridge was truly remarkable, Yuri said, his voice resonating with respect. We've heard the tales of your bravery and I must say, I'm in awe of your skill and dedication, Zenith says, nodding and her eyes shining with maternal pride. Azane settles on the edge of the bed and takes Naruto's hand in hers. Indeed, love, she murmured, her gaze filled with tenderness. I merely did what was necessary to protect Zeppeli and its people, Naruto says, offering a humble smile as Ghost comes to nuzzle his face. Always be the modest one. Humility only adds to your valor, Yuri says, his arms folded. He's always been like that. Downplaying his achievements, even when they're extraordinary, Tomo chimes in as she and Mio exchange looks with their lips curving into matching grins. Mio nods in agreement, it's part of his charm, she adds with a wink. Naruto shakes his head with a sheepish grin tugging at his lips. You're all too kind, he said, his voice laced with gratitude. Your courage and dedication are an inspiration to many, Zenith said, her voice warm and maternal. A comfortable silence falls over the room and is punctuated by the distant chirping of birds outside the window. Naruto's gaze drifts to the sunlight filtering through the curtains and casting warm patterns across the bedsheets. How are you faring? Do you need anything? Azane asks, her brow furrowed with concern. I'll be alright. Having you here is more than enough. The pain is manageable and I heal quickly, Naruto says, offering her a reassuring smile. Yuri's expression grows pensive as he regards Naruto. Have you given any thought to what comes next? He inquires, his eyes glancing to his niece. Naruto's brow furrows slightly as he contemplates Yuri's question. We did come simply to aid Duchess Ophelia and Zenith. But also we are adventurers and I also have a sense of wanderlust. A desire to continue exploring and helping those in need, he said, his voice thoughtful. Perhaps you could head to Arches. It is a bustling city with many opportunities for adventurers. Duchess Ophelia could likely secure you a promotion to an A-rank adventurer. Given your valor here in Zeppeli, Zenith says, sparkling with understanding. That seemed like an excellent idea. With an A-rank license, you'd have more autonomy and resources to pursue your own quests, Tomo chimes, her expression brightening. And who knows what adventures await us in Arches. I've heard tales of ancient ruins and powerful artifacts hidden within the surrounding wilderness, Mio says, her eyes alight with excitement. Wherever our path leads, I'll be by your side. Your courage and compassion are an inspiration to us all, Azane says, giving Naruto's hand a gentle squeeze and her gaze filled with adoration. I'm sure Duchess Ophelia will be more than happy to grant you such a letter. Given your heroic deeds, Zenith says, her eyes twinkling. Naruto's lips curves into a warm smile, then it's settled. We make our way to Arches and seek out new adventures, he said, his eyes shining with determination. And who knows? Perhaps you'll even find a few more lovely companions along the way, Tomo teases, exchanging a mischievous glance to Mio and both grinning. After all, a dashing hero like Naruto is bound to attract admirers, Mio says, winking playfully. Azane laughs and it is a melodic sound that fills the room with warmth. Ignore them, love. They're just jealous of your charm, she said, leaning in to press a tender kiss to Naruto's cheek. Laughter ripples through the room and Naruto couldn't help but join in, the warmth and camaraderie filling his heart with joy. Azane stands up to carefully unwrap the bandages from Naruto's back and upper arm with her brow furrowed in concentration. The wound is still healing but bear angry red lines across his tanned skin, a testament to the ferocity of the battle he has endured. These look better than yesterday, Azane murmurs, her fingers gently tracing the edges of the healing cuts. Naruto nods and wincing slightly as Azane's touch sends a dull ache through his muscles. Uzumaki can heal quickly but even I have my limits, he admits with a rueful chuckle. Zenith steps forward and her eyes shimmering with a soft but azure glow. Allow me, my dear. I've recovered my magic, she said, her voice soothing like a gentle breeze, and points her staff. A warm and tingling sensation spread across his body as her healing energy flows into him. Your mastery over healing magic is truly remarkable, Lady Zenith, Naruto murmurs, his voice laced with gratitude and feeling her soothing magic but also ease the lingering pain. Think nothing of it, Naruto, Zenith replies, her eyes shining with maternal affection. As the last of the angry red lines fade from Naruto's body, does Zenith step back and her eyes shimmering with satisfaction. There. Good as new, she said, her voice tinged with pride. Naruto twists his torso and testing the mobility of his newly healed body. Thank you, Lady Zenith, he says, his eyes shining with gratitude. Ghost moves into his lap as Naruto shifts and he rubs the pup's head. Tomo claps Naruto on the shoulder with her grip firm and loving, and with your wounds tended to. We'll be ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead, she said, her voice resonating with confidence. Challenges and adventures with Archies in our sights. Who knows what wonders and perils await us, Mio says, her expression radiating anticipation and her voice laced with enthusiasm. Naruto chuckles with his eyes shining in a sense of wanderlust. I look forward to finding out, he said, his gaze sweeping over his companions. A comfortable silence settles over the room, filled with unspoken camaraderie and anticipation for the adventures that lay ahead. Naruto stretches his newly healed muscles and relishing in the absence of pain. Now if you'll excuse me. I believe a bath is in order, he said, a playful glint in his eyes. Azane laughs with her melodic voice ringing out like a bell. Of course, love, she said, rising gracefully from her seat. Don't take too long. We wouldn't want you to prune up in there, Tomo teases, exchanging a knowing glance with Mio. Or perhaps you'd like some company, Mio adds, waggling her eyebrows suggestively and her eyes dancing with mirth. Naruto's cheeks flush slightly but he merely shakes his head and a bemused grin tugging at his lips. Behave you too, he chides, though there was no real heat behind his words. Zenith and Yuri share an amused look with their expressions a mix of exasperation and fondness at the playful banter. Off with you then. We'll leave you to your ablutions, Zenith said, shooing Naruto toward the adjoining bathing chamber. Naruto slips into the bathing chamber and the tantalizing scent of aromatic oils wafting through the air. He quickly shed his clothing, reveling in the freedom of movement his healed body now affords him. I wonder how everyone is doing in Konoha, Naruto thought, sinking into the fragrant waters with a contented sigh. The heat seeps into his muscles, easing any lingering aches and tensions from the recent battle. He allowed his head to loll back, his eyes drifting closed as he surrenders to the soothing embrace of the water. Azane's gentle presence lingers in his thoughts, a beacon of unwavering love and support. Her unwavering devotion is a balm to his soul, providing a sense of grounding amidst the whirlwind of their adventures. Anko would be happy I have 3 women who love me, Naruto thought, and with a reluctant sigh, moving out the bath to grab a plush towel. He dries himself and his muscles feel revitalized, his spirit renewed and ready to embrace the unknown that awaits him. He dons a crisp white tunic, a pair of sturdy black pants and slips on his boots as he emerges from the bathing chamber but sees a maid is waiting patiently with her posture demure. Pardon me, Sir Naruto. Duchess Ophelia wishes to see you in the gardens, the maid said with a respectful curtsy. Naruto nods and adjusts the crisp white tunic that is draped over his frame. Lead the way, he replies, falling into step beside the maid. They traverse the winding corridors of the estate and the maid guiding him with quiet efficiency. They soon step through a arched doorway, emerging into a lush garden brimming with vibrant blooms and verdant foliage. Ophelia sits amidst the natural splendor and sitting upon a marble bench, her regal form dressed as he saw her last. Beside her is Knight Commander Rogel Dorn. Naruto, my dear boy, please join us, Ophelia calls out, beckoning him forward with a graceful gesture. Naruto approaches as he offers a respectful bow to the Duchess and the Knight Commander. You wished to see me, my lady? He inquires, his tone polite yet tinged with a hint of familiarity. Indeed. Zenith has informed me of your plans to continue your adventures in Arceus. It gladdens my heart to know that you and your companions remain steadfast in your pursuit of growth and discovery, Ophelia starts, her eyes shining with warmth. The Adventurers Guild in Arceus is renowned for its challenges and opportunities. You will find no shortage of quests to test your mettle, Rogel says, nodding in acknowledgement. Thank you, Duchess Ophelia. Knight Commander, Naruto replies, his voice carrying a hint of gratitude. Ophelia's smile broadens as she exchanges a meaningful glance with Rogel. I was informed of your valor during the conflict. Your actions have not gone unnoticed, and it is my belief that you have more than proven your worth, she said, her tone warm with pride. Indeed. Your deeds speak volumes of your courage and skill. It is for this reason that Duchess Ophelia and I have agreed to put forth a recommendation to the Adventurers Guild in Arceus, Rogel says, his imposing presence lending weight to the Duchess' words. Zenith mentioned writing a letter to see you promoted at the guild from B rank to A rank for your valor here. I agreed with her. You are not just an adventurer but also a knight-errant now, Ophelia adds, her eyes twinkling with a mixture of mirth and affection. Naruto's brow furrows slightly as he regards the two esteemed figures before him. A knight-errant, he inquires, unfamiliar with the term. A knight-errant is a wandering knight. One who travels the realm in search of adventure and noble deeds, Ophelia says, smiling and nodding in affirmation. Rogel steps forward with his steely gaze meeting Naruto's, as a knight-errant. You would have the freedom to forge your own path. To undertake quests and challenges as you see fit. You would also have the opportunity to form your own band of knights. A fellowship of like-minded individuals united in their pursuit of valor and honor, he explains, his deep voice resonating with authority. Naruto's eyes widen as his mind races with the possibilities, and the prospect of leading his own band of knights ignited a spark of excitement within him. That is a great honor. I am humbled by your faith in me, Naruto said, inclining his head respectfully. Ophelia's expression softens with a bit maternal affection for Naruto evident. You have more than earned this recognition. Your actions have proven your worth in a short time, she assured him, and Naruto nods. With our recommendation, the Adventurers Guild in Arceus should grant you the rank of A-rank adventurer. This will open doors to more challenging and rewarding quests, allowing you to further hone your skills and prove your mettle, Rogel says, his stern features betraying a hint of pride. Thank you both. I shall strive to uphold the honor of a knight-errant, Naruto said, his voice infused with conviction. I have no doubt that you will. The letter of recommendation shall be prepared by tomorrow morn. It will serve as your introduction to the Adventurers Guild in Arceus, Ophelia assures him, her smile radiating warmth and pride. You honor me greatly, Duchess Ophelia. I shall make the most of this opportunity and strive to make you proud, Naruto says, inclining his head respectfully. Your dedication and valor have earned you this recognition, Rogel says, nodding approvingly. I shall endeavor to live up to your expectations, Knight Commander. Duchess Ophelia. Thought I must ask what will happen to Railrick Blackwood and the Lothar family, Naruto says, with a genuine smile gracing his face, but it shifts to a serious one. Railric Blackwood will be stripped of his noble status and lands for his treacherous actions. As for Edric Lothar, he has surrendered his territories. Recognizing the error of his ways but his son, Ophelia says, her tone firm yet fair. Naruto meet her eyes as his expression hardens at the mention of Darren Lothar, the foul cur using the chaos of the Battle of the Bridge to stab him in the back, but he paid with the loss of his hand. What about his Darren Lothar? Naruto asks, unable to conceal the edge in his tone. Darren Lothar attempted to escape by taking one of the younger healers as a hostage. However, his missing hand proved to be a grave disadvantage. Despite his desperate attempt, one of my knights swiftly dispatched him, freeing the healer from his grasp. Rogel says, his expression hardened as he recounts the events. His actions were cowardly and dishonorable, resorting to using an innocent as a shield. Darren Lothar's bitterness has consumed him, clouding his judgment and leading him down a path of recklessness, Ophelia says, nodding grimly. Naruto clenches his fists in anger at the thought of Darren's despicable actions, to harm an innocent for his own selfish gain. He trails off, shaking his head in disgust. Unfortunately, there are those in this world who prioritize their desires above all else. Even at the cost of innocent lives, Ophelia says, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and understanding. She rises from the bench with a final smile directed to the blonde as Rogel falls in step with the Duchess while Naruto bows. Naruto watches them depart as a sense of reflection and determination swelling within his chest. The path ahead is uncertain, but he feels emboldened by the faith and support of those around him. With renewed resolve, turns on his heels and makes his way back to eagerly share the news with his companions. Shinbariku. Naruto makes his way back to Azane's room, but as he approaches the door, could hear the faint sounds of laughter and playful banter emanating from within. He pushes open the door and is greeted by a heartwarming sight. Azane sitting cross-legged on the floor, a playful smile gracing her features as she gently touzles the fur of Ghost as he yips happily and nuzzling against her touch. Tomo and Mio lounge nearby, and their expressions filled with amusement as they watch the endearing exchange between Azane and Ghost, but upon noticing Naruto's entrance, their eyes lit up with curiosity. There you are. We were beginning to wonder if you'd gotten lost in the bath, Tomo exclaims, a mischievous grin tugging at her lips. Mio giggles as her eyes sparkle with mirth. Or perhaps you were enjoying a little alone time, she teases, waggling her eyebrows suggestively. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at their playful banter, but his heart warms by their presence, I can assure you. I was merely delayed by matters of importance, he replied, his gaze shifting to Azane. What news do you bring? Azane inquires, her voice laced with curiosity and rising gracefully to her feet. Naruto's expression softens as he meets their gazes with a surge of affection filling his heart. Duchess Ophelia has agreed to write a letter of recommendation to the Adventurers Guild in Arches, he announced, his voice tinged with pride. That's wonderful news, Mio says, her tone filled with excitement. Naruto nods with a smile tugging at his lips. Indeed. With her recommendation, this could towards me getting promoted to an A- rank adventurer, he confirms, his chest swelling with a sense of accomplishment. Azane's eyes shine with pride as she regards her beloved. Your valor and dedication have earned you this recognition, she said, her voice warm with admiration. It is an honor I will strive to uphold, Naruto promises, his gaze sweeping over the three women who have become such an integral part of his life. Tomo's mischievous grin returns and her eyes dancing with mirth. Well. It seems we'll have to celebrate this momentous occasion, she declares, rising to her feet with a graceful flourish. Mio mirrors Tomo's enthusiasm and nodding eagerly. Indeed. A night of revelry is in order, Mio agrees, her tone filled with excitement. Azane chuckles softly and shakes her head in fond exasperation at the antics of her companions. Perhaps we can plan a celebration after our tasks in Arches are complete, she suggests, ever the voice of reason. Perhaps a modest celebration to mark the occasion would be fitting. We could gather and raise a glass to our future endeavors at a tavern, Naruto suggests, his expression brightening at the prospect. Tomo's eyes sparkle with excitement. A tavern. Now that sounds like my kind of celebration. She says, shooting Mio a conspiratorial wink and eliciting a giggle from her companion. Just remember, you two. We mustn't let our revelries get too out of hand. We have important tasks ahead of us in Archies, Azane interjects, her tone gentle yet firm. Mio nods solemnly, but the mischievous twinkle in her eyes betrays her true intentions. Of course, Azane. We'll be the epitome of propriety, she assures, her lips quirking into a playful smile. The townsfolk should be returning from the shelters. So the taverns will likely to be lively. We can mingle, enjoy a few drinks and good food, Naruto says, chuckling at their antics and his heart swelling with affection for his companions. Azane's expression softens as she regards Naruto. A wise plan, love, she says, her eyes shining with love and pride. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get ourselves ready and head out for a night of merriment. Tomo says, clapping her hands together, an enthusiasm infectious. Mio nods eagerly and already envisioning the lively atmosphere and large portions of food. It's been too long since we've indulged in a proper celebration, she remarks, her tone tinged with anticipation. Naruto smiled warmly at his companions. Very well then. Let us prepare ourselves and make our way to the tavern. Tonight we celebrate our successes and toast to the adventures that lie ahead, he says, their spirits buoyed by the prospect of a night of revelry. Music. Adventure, fantasy, medieval RPG game music. Nightfall descends upon the city of Zeppeli as Naruto and his companions make their way through the winding streets, the tantalizing aroma of roasted meats and spiced ales wafting through the air. Ghost trots alongside them, his nose twitching with curiosity at the myriad scents that permeate the bustling marketplace. There should be a good place. Tomo exclaims, her eyes lighting up as she pointed toward a lively establishment nestled between a bakery and a blacksmith's forge. The tavern's wooden sign creaked gently in the evening breeze, depicting a foaming mug of ale surrounded by clusters of hops. Mio's eyes sparkle with excitement as she takes in the inviting atmosphere. It certainly looks like a lively place, she observes, her gaze flickering to the open windows from which raucous laughter and the strumming of a lute could be heard. Azane chuckles softly and adjusting her grip on Ghost after picking him as the pup squirms in her arms while drawn by the tantalizing scents wafting from the tavern. It seems we've found the perfect spot for our celebration, she remarks, her tone warm and affectionate. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go and make some merry, Naruto said, gesturing towards the tavern's entrance. The group made their way inside with a collective nod of agreement, and the din of lively conversation enveloped them as they stepped through the threshold. The tavern is abuzz with activity as the air thick with the mingled aromas of roasted meats, spiced ales and the earthy scent of pipe smoke. Rough-hewn tables were scattered throughout the spacious common room, occupied by a diverse array of patrons. They make their way towards an unoccupied table and Tomo's eyes sparkle with mischief. This is more like it. I can already feel the stories and tales waiting to be shared over a frothy ale, she exclaims, her gaze sweeping over the lively scene. Indeed, Mio says, her own excitement palpable. Azane shakes her head fondly and carefully sets Ghost down on the floor beside their table. The pup immediately begins sniffing around, his tail wagging eagerly as he explores his new surroundings. Now, you two, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Tonight is meant for celebration, Azane chides gently, though her eyes twinkled with amusement. Azane is right. Tonight we're celebrating our successes and toast to the adventures that lie ahead, Naruto agrees, his gaze sweeping over his companions with affection. A buxom barmaid approaches their table as if summoned while her ample bosom strains against the confines of her low-cut bodice. Well now. What'll it be for ye lot? She inquires, her voice carrying a hint of a playful lilt. Tomo flashes the barmaid a charming grin and her red eyes sparkling with mirth. Bring us your finest ales, my dear. And perhaps a plate of your heartiest fare, she requests, gesturing grandly. The barmaid's cheeks flush ever so slightly at Tomo's flirtatious manner, but she nods and turns to retrieve their order, her hips swaying enticingly as she makes her way back to the bar. Laying it on a bit thick, Tomo. Or are we trying to make our dear Naruto a tad jealous? Mio teases while leaning in conspiratorially, a mischievous grin playing upon her lips and staring slyly at Naruto. Tomo meets Mio's gaze with a playful wink and her expression one of feigned innocence. Whatever do you mean? I'm merely being friendly with the staff. Ensuring we receive the finest service, she counters, her tone dripping with exaggerated sweetness. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at their banter but shakes his head in fond exasperation. You two are incorrigible. But I can assure you, there's no need for such antics. My affections are not so easily swayed, he remarks, though his eyes twinkled with amusement. Mio giggles as her eyes sparkle with mirth as she nudges Tomo playfully. Ah, but where's the fun in that? A little friendly competition never hurt anyone, she quips, her tone light and teasing. Now, again, let's not get carried away. We're here to celebrate. Not to stir up trouble or jealousies, Azane cautions with a gentle yet firm tone, after clearing her throat gently but her lips curve into an indulgent smile. The barmaid returns as her arms were laden with a tray brimming with frothy mugs of ale and a platter piled high with roasted meats, crusty bread, and hearty stews. The tantalizing aromas waft through the air, causing Ghost to perk up eagerly and his tail wagging in anticipation. There ye go, loves. Finest ale and fare in all of Zeppeli, the barmaid said, setting the tray down on their table with a flourish. Tomo flashes the barmaid a roguish wink and her eyes twinkling with mirth. Why, thank you, darling. I'm sure it will be absolutely delectable, she purrs, her tone silky smooth. The barmaid flushes once more, though she seems to revel in the attention and her ample bosom swaying as she saunters away while her hips sway enticingly. Mio giggles with her gaze following the barmaid's retreating form. Honestly, Tomo, you're simply incorrigible, she teases, though her tone holds no real reproach. Naruto shakes his head in mock exasperation but his eyes sparkle with amusement. Shall we toast then? To our recent successes and to the adventures that lie ahead in this vibrant city, he suggests, raising his mug of frothy ale. To success and to adventure. They echo, their voices ringing out amidst the lively din of the tavern. They clink their mugs together as the sounds of laughter and merriment intermingling with the strains of music and the clatter of dishes. Naruto feels a surge of contentment wash over him as here he is surrounded by his dearest companions but knows that their journey was far from over and that the greatest adventures still lay ahead. Song ends. Shinburiku. The next morning comes while the first rays of dawn filter through the window and rouses Naruto from his slumber. He blinks away the remnants of sleep, his mind already gearing up for the day's tasks. He stretches his limbs as he rises from the plush bed, his gaze sweeping over the room he has called home for the past few nights. A soft knock at the door draws his attention and a maid steps inside in her posture demure. Pardon the intrusion, Sir Naruto. The Duchess Ophelia sends her regards and has provided the letter for you, she said, dipping into a respectful curtsy. She proffers a sealed envelope with the wax seal bearing the emblem of the duchy. Thank you. Please convey my appreciation to the Duchess for her hospitality and support. Naruto replies and accepts the letter with a nod of gratitude, his voice still slightly raspy from sleep. The maid curtsies once more before slipping out of the room as the blonde sets about his tasks, packing his belongings and making final preparations. He gets dressed in a black form-fitting long-sleeve shirt with silver accents that outline his muscles and a metal plate on his collar, a pair of hybrid ninja cargo pants with adjustable straps having tight ankles, black boots to his calves and white laces. Lastly, a double, high-collared black coat with blue trim and the emblem of a white spiral wrapping around the moon on the back. He then secures Gungar in its belt holster around his waist, the weight of the blade a familiar and comforting presence. All right, Naruto thought, after ensuring he has everything he needs. He makes his way out of the guest quarters and into the bustling corridors of the ducal manor. He finds Azane carrying Ghost in her arms, while flanked by Mio and Tomo. Azane is dressed similarly to her mother, of a plum blouse having a thin tie, a white low-cut corset vest having gold trim, black shorts with black stockings underneath a light green skirt, having slits to her thighs, and ankle boots. Good morning, Azane. Are you ready to depart? Naruto greets with a warm smile. Azane nods, with her expression a mix of excitement and sadness. Yes, I've gathered my things. It's just, she says, as her voice trails off, but Naruto immediately knows and takes her hand. It's never easy to say goodbye. Especially to family, Naruto says, his forehead on hers. Azane manages a small smile and draws strength from Naruto's reassuring words as the four head for the stable, where Zenith and Yuri were waiting for them, the air thick with the weight of their impending separation. Zenith envelopes her daughter in a tight embrace with tears glistening in her eyes. Take care of yourself. My dear Azane, know that our love will always be with you. No matter where your path may lead, she whispers, her voice trembling with emotion. Stay strong, my niece. The world may be vast, but your courage and resilience will guide you through any challenge, Yuri says, placing a hand on Azane's shoulder. Azane nods but is fighting back tears as she returns their embraces. I'll miss you both dearly, she manages to say. We understand, my child, Zenith says, placing a gentle kiss on her daughter's forehead. She then moves to hug Naruto like he is her own son, while Yuri gives the blonde a curt nod. Take care of her, Zenith whispers, as Naruto rubs her back. Before you embark, we have one final gift for you, Azane, Yuri says, leading into the stables as Naruto goes to Liam and the black stallion whinnies. Yuri gestures towards a magnificent white mare, its coat shimmering like freshly fallen snow next to Liam's stall. She's beautiful, Azane says with a small gasp, her eyes widening in wonder. A trusted steed to accompany you on your travels. May she carry you swiftly and safely. Wherever your path may lead, Zenith explains, as Tomo and Mio exchange a look. Azane approaches the mare with her hand outstretched, and the majestic creature nuzzles her palm affectionately. Thank you. I shall cherish her always, she whispers, her voice thick with emotion. Naruto watches the heartfelt exchange with a smile, grateful for the kindness and generosity shown by Zenith and Yuri. Azane embraces her mother and uncle once more, whispering promises to return and share the tales of her adventures. I'll miss you both terribly, Azane murmurs, her voice quivering with emotion. We know, dear. Just promise us you'll stay safe and keep your wits about you, Zenith replies, brushing away a stray tear from Azane's cheek. The world beyond can be unpredictable and treacherous. Trust in your companions and never hesitate to seek aid when needed, Yuri says, nodding in agreement. I'll be careful, I promise, Azane says, and managing a smile but grateful for their concern. Naruto, Mio and Tomo were already mounted, their steeds pawing at the ground in anticipation as Azane embraces her mother and uncle once again. Azane mounts her magnificent white mare towards the waiting group. Ready to embark on our adventure? Naruto asks, his eyes twinkling with excitement. Azane nods with her spirits lifted by the prospect of the journey ahead. More than ready, she replies, nudging the mare with practiced ease. They trot out of the stable and head through the grand gates of the manor. The banter between them was light and jovial. Mio regales them with tales of her mischievous escapades, while Tomo rolls her eyes in feigned exasperation, though a hint of a smile tugged at her lips. The rhythmic clop of hooves against the cobblestone path accompany their lively chatter as they make their way through the bustling streets of Zeppeli. Zeppeli is coming back to life. Bit by bit, Naruto thought, his gaze sweeping over the lively marketplace bustling with activity around them. Vendors hawk their wares, their voices mingling with the chatter of passers-by. The tantalizing aromas of freshly baked breads and sizzling meats waft through the air, making his and Ghost's mouths water. The wolf pup rides in a satchel with his eyes taking in everything, and a few happy yips escape his mouth. They soon approach the western gate to the western bridge as Naruto slows Liam. A group of knights stationed at the bridge's entrance salute them as they draw near. "Hail, travelers! We bid you farewell on your journey," one of them calls out. "We've heard tales of your valor. Sir Naruto. The defeat of Galen Drakewood and his forces on the northern bridge was no small feat," a second knight chimes in. "Your words honor me, good sirs. But the true victory belongs to the people, whose lives we've safeguarded," Naruto says, inclining his head in acknowledgement. "Safe travels. May the gods watch over you," one of them said, gesturing toward the bridge. Naruto leads the group onto the bridge with a nod of gratitude, their horses' hooves clopping rhythmically against the stone. They begin to cross the 3-mile span, noticing the scars of the recent battle that had taken place here. Blackened scorch marks marred the once pristine surface, and small chunks of rubble litter the sides of the bridge. Did the battle against Blackwood's forces ravage all the bridges like this? Azane says with a small gasp, her eyes wide as she surveyed the destruction. "Tomo and I were fortunate enough to halt their advance before they could wreak havoc on the other bridges. This one in the north one bore the brunt of their assault," Mio says, her expression solemn. "Indeed. Thanks to us taking 3 of the bridges. Zeppeli's knights were able to face Blackwood's forces," Tomo says, nodding in agreement as they continue across the bridge. Once they reach the other side, they quicken the pace of their horses, hooves thundering against the well-trodden road. The rhythmic gait provide a soothing backdrop as they left the town of Zeppeli behind. "How long before we reach Arches?" Azane asks, her voice carrying a hint of curiosity and anticipation. Tomo turns in her saddle to face Azane. "Several days' ride. If we maintain a steady pace. The journey will be long, but the sights along the way are sure to captivate," she replies, her tone matter of fact. Mio lets out a dramatic sigh, such is the life of an adventurer. Always on the move and never settling in one place for too long, Mio says, flashing a roguish grin at Azane, and Naruto chuckles at Mio's exuberance. They press onward as the lush countryside unfolds before them, fields of golden wheat swaying in the gentle breeze. The sun's rays dapple the winding road, casting patterns of light and shadow on their path. They occasionally would pass through quaint villages, the locals waving and offering friendly greetings as they went by. Shinburiku. Several days later, the 4 travelers crest a hill, and their eyes were met with the breathtaking sight of the fortified city of Arches. Towering stone walls rise majestically, encircling the city like a formidable embrace. From their vantage point, they could make out the bustling streets and tiled rooftops nestled within the protective embrace of the walls. "There it is, the city of Arches, and our next destination," Naruto declares, a hint of awe in his voice. Azane's eyes widen and takes in the sight before her. "It's magnificent," she breathes, her gaze sweeping over the imposing walls and the lush forests that surrounds the city. In the distance they see the towering peaks of the Blackstone Mountains, their jagged silhouettes looming in the distance. The sight is both awe-inspiring and foreboding, a reminder of the untamed wilderness that lays beyond the city's protective walls. "Those mountains," Azane murmurs, her eyes fixed on the imposing peaks. The Blackstone Mountains are treacherous terrain that spread west and changes to different mountain ranges. Home to all manner of beasts and dangers. We would do well to avoid venturing too deep into their embrace unless absolutely necessary, Tomo says, her expression grave. "But where's the fun in that? Who knows what wonders or treasures might lie hidden within those rugged peaks," Mio says, quirking an eyebrow and a mischievous glint in her eye. "I would advise against entertaining such reckless notions. The mountains are not to be trifled with. Lest we court disaster," Tomo says, fixing a stern gaze on Mio. They approached the city gates and they could see the steady stream of merchants, travelers and citizens passing through the massive portcullis. Guards clad in gleaming armor stand vigilant, their watchful eyes scanning each person who enters or exits the city. Let us conduct ourselves with dignity and respect for the local customs, Naruto says, his demeanor taking on an air of authority. Yes, we're here to see Naruto promoted, Azane says, her eyes alight with excitement and a hint of trepidation. Hail travelers. State your business and intent within the walls of Arches, the guard calls out, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Greetings, good sir. We are a group of adventurers heading to the Adventurers Guild in your fair city, Naruto says, exuding an air of confidence. Indeed. We are known as Uzu. A band of skilled warriors and explorers, Tomo adds, nodding in agreement. Uzu. I believe I've heard whispers of your exploits, the guard says, arching his eyebrow slightly at the mention of their group's name. Our reputation precedes us, it seems, Mio says, flashing a mischievous grin. Azane is slightly nervous but remains silent while taking in the exchange with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Very well. You may enter. But heed my warning. Arches is a bustling city, rife with all manner of opportunities and dangers. Keep your wits about you and don't stray too far from the well-trodden paths, the guard says, after eyeing them for a moment before gesturing towards the gates. We appreciate the counsel, good sir. You have our word that we shall conduct ourselves honorably within your city's walls, Naruto says, inclining his head in gratitude. The group urge their steeds forward and their hooves clopping against the cobblestone path as they enter the city. Quite the lively place, Mio remarks, her gaze sweeping over the bustling crowds. Indeed, Arches is a prosperous city, a hub of commerce and culture, Tomo says, her expression one of quiet appreciation. Let's find a stable first. Then we can seek directions to the Adventurers Guild, Naruto says, his eyes alert. They wound their way through the winding streets, dodging carts and pedestrians as they went, but eventually come upon a spacious stable, where a burly stable hand greets them with a toothy grin. Welcome travelers. Need a place to board your fine steeds, the stable hand booms, looking over the four-horse but his eyes on Liam. Aye, good sir. We're in need of your services for a few days, Naruto says, dismounting Liam and leading him by the reins. Sturdy beasts these are. I'll take good care of 'em. Don't you worry, the stable hand says, continuing to appraise the horses with a practiced eye. One by one the group dismount and hand over their mounts to the stable hand and others, who leads them into the spacious stable. I wonder where might we find this Adventurers Guild, Azane asks, her curiosity piqued. Head back to the main road. Then turn right and keep going until you see the Unicorn Inn. A fine establishment with a carved wooden unicorn above the door. Once you spot that, take a left and continue on. You'll come across a two-story building with crossed swords carved onto a sign hanging over the entrance. That's the Adventurers Guild, a stable hand says, smiling and pointing down the street. Many thanks. Your guidance is much appreciated, Naruto says, committing the directions to memory and flipping a gold coin to the man. Mio claps her hands together and her eyes sparkling with excitement. Well, what are we waiting for? Adventure awaits, she says and starts down the street, her stride brisk and purposeful. Mio, wait. You can't just charge off without the rest of us, Tomo says, sighing and hurrying after her. Come on. We'd best keep those two out of trouble, Naruto says, taking Azane's hand, and they briskly walk to catch up to the others. They set off and weave through the bustling crowds that fill the narrow streets. It's so lively here, Azane remarks, marveling at the energy that pulses through the city. Seems so. Arches seems like a place of opportunity but also danger for the unwary. Naruto says, a smile playing on his lips. They soon catch up to Mio and Tomo, who were engaged in a lively debate about the merits of caution versus reckless abandon. They round a corner and the unicorn comes into view, its wooden sign creaking gently in the breeze and true to the stable hand's directions. They take a left and continue down the narrower street to find the guild building. Azane's eyes widen as the Adventurers Guild looms before them, its stone facade imposing and weathered. The crossed swords carved into the sign above the entrance seems to beckon them, promising untold adventures and challenges. Well, shall we see what opportunities await within? Mio says, her grin stretching from ear to ear. Naruto leads the way as the 4 members of Uzu and Ghost push open the heavy oak doors. A few people see him enter with a few whispering and a few looking to scam them, while many were milling about or checking the board for jobs. The interior is made of gray stone with arch-style windows to let in light, a wooden staircase to the second level. It has a long desk with numerous bookcases and several guild workers speaking with various people. Seems pretty impressive, Naruto says, squeezing Azane's hand, and she nods in awe. Mio's eyes scan the bustling crowds that filled the hall, quite the lively place. I spy potential for both opportunity and mischief, she remarks, arching an eyebrow. Mind your manners, Mio, Tomo chides, shooting the spider a reproachful look. They venture further into the guild and Azane couldn't help but notice the curious glances or whispers that follow in their wake. Look at that one, strutting around like some pampered noble with 3 fine wenches. Betty's never seen a real fight in his life, a grizzled adventurer mutters to his companion, his gaze fixed on Naruto. Tomo and Mio's eyes narrow in anger as someone is trying to disparage their Naruto. Mio is about to open her mouth, but Naruto glances back and shakes his head ever so slightly, wordlessly cautioning her against any brash remarks. Tomo and Mio's expression shift into a more neutral guise as they heed Naruto's unspoken warning. They head towards the long desk, where a stern-faced woman sits, her quill scratching across a ledger, and she glances up, her gaze appraising them with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. State your business, the woman demands, her tone brooking no nonsense. Greetings. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. This is Ghost and my companions Azane Katetsu. Mio and Tomo were adventurers, Naruto said, as each of show their dog tags and Ghost yips. He unseals the letter that Ophelia wrote from a seal. I have a letter from the esteemed Duchess Ophelia of Zeppeli herself, Naruto says, presenting it to her. The woman's eyebrows rise slightly as she accepts the letter, breaking the wax seal and scanning its contents. Her gaze flicker between Naruto and the parchment, a newfound respect creeping into her expression. Eliza Greystone, Guild Secretary. It seems you do bear a missive from the esteemed Duchess herself. Please follow me. The Guild Master will wish to discuss this matter personally, she introduces herself, her tone losing some of its initial sternness. Eliza rises from her seat and gesturing for them to follow as she led the way towards a side door, then up a set of stairs to the second level. The group trail behind Eliza with their footsteps echoing against the stone floors. They were ushered into a spacious office, where a broad-shouldered man sits behind a large desk, his brow furrowed as he pores over a stack of documents. He glances up as they enter, his eyes narrowing slightly at the sight of Naruto and his companions. Guild Master Aldrich. These adventurers bear a letter from Duchess Ophelia of Zeppeli, Eliza announces, holding the opened letter in her hands. Aldrich's expression shifts as his gruff demeanor softening ever so slightly at the mention of the Duchess' name. He extends his hand and Eliza passes him the letter, before excusing herself, in which he proceeds to read with great care. Aldrich looks up after a moment with his gaze sweeping over the group. Well, it seems you come highly recommended. The Duchess is a valued ally of the guild and her endorsement carries great weight. Tell me, young man, what business brings you and your companions to our fair city, he rumbles, his deep voice resonating through the room and his eyes narrowing slightly as he studies the blonde. Naruto meets Aldrich's gaze with a steady and confident expression. Guild Master. I seek an opportunity to advance my rank as an adventurer. Currently I am B rank, but I believe my skills and experience warrant promotion to the A rank, he begins, inclining his head respectfully. A lofty aspiration. And how long have you been an adventurer? If I may ask, Aldrich muses, leaning back his chair and regarding Naruto with a thoughtful gaze. Close to 2 years, Guild Master, Naruto replies evenly. 2 years is indeed a brief period, but I have seen prodigies rise through the ranks with remarkable swiftness. Very well then. If you believe yourself worthy of the A rank, you must undergo a series of trials and challenges to prove your mettle, he concedes as his gaze remains impassive, but a glimmer of interest flickers in his eyes. Naruto nods and is unfazed by the guild master's words. I welcome the opportunity to demonstrate my abilities, he states, his voice carrying a confident edge. And your companions? What roles do they play in your endeavor? Aldrich inquires with his gaze shifting to Tomo, Mio and Azane while studying them intently. Greetings, Guild Master. I am Tomo and trusted companion to Naruto. I already hold the rank of A-class adventurer, Tomo said, her voice carrying a dignified tone. I'm Mio and I am an A- rank adventurer as well. Though my methods may be unconventional, I assure you, my skills are not to be underestimated, Mio chimes in, her tone playful yet tinged with confidence. Azane hesitates for a moment before speaking up. My name is Azane Katetsu. I currently hold the rank of B-class adventurer, she said, her voice wavering slightly before steadying. I see. A formidable group to be sure. Tell me, Azane, why are you choosing to remain at the B rank and not seek promotion like Naruto? Aldrich says, nodding slowly and his gaze appraising each of them in turn. While I am confident in my abilities, I recognize the need for caution and humility. The path to higher ranks is fraught with danger, and I wish to proceed at a pace that allows me to hone my skills without recklessly endangering myself or my companions, Azane replies and straightening her back in meeting Aldrich's gaze. A wise approach. Overconfidence can be an adventurer's undoing. As for your request to be promoted to the A rank, the process is a rigorous one. The trials and challenges you must face are designed to push you to your limits and prove your worthiness, Aldrich says, nodding approvingly and turning his attention back to Naruto. I understand and I am prepared to face whatever trials you deem necessary, Naruto says, meeting Aldrich's gaze and his expression resolute. Good. The promotion exam is in 6 months, Aldrich says after leaning forward on his desk. Very well. 6 months should provide ample time for us to acclimate ourselves to the area and hone our skills further, Naruto replies with a nod. Indeed, and during that period, you and your companions will have the opportunity to undertake various tasks and missions. Should you achieve exceptional feats, a field promotion may be granted, allowing you to bypass the formal promotion tests, Aldrich says, stroking his beard contemplatively. Mio's eyes lit up at the mention of missions and she exchanges a conspiratorial grin with Tomo. That is most generous, Guild Master. We shall endeavor to help Naruto prove himself worthy of such an honor, Tomo interjects, her voice carrying a respectful tone. The guild offers temporary housing facilities outside the city limits to the east. You are welcome to make use of these accommodations during your stay free of charge, Aldrich informs them, his expression softening slightly. Azane's eyes widen at the mention of free housing and she glances at Naruto as he meets her gaze and giving a subtle nod, recognizing the value of such an offer. We gratefully accept your hospitality, Guild Master. It will be a boon to have a secure base of operations as we embark on our endeavors, Naruto said, inclining his head in appreciation. Aldrich pushes back his chair and rises to his feet with his imposing stature commanding respect. Very well then. Have Eliza provide you with the necessary details and arrangements. May your adventures bring honor to yourselves and to the guild, he said, his voice resonating through the chamber. He gestures towards the door after those words, signaling the conclusion of their meeting as Naruto and his companions bow respectfully before turning to leave. Mio couldn't contain her excitement any longer as they exit the guild master's office. Did you hear that? Field promotions is on the table for Naruto. This is our chance to really make a name for him, she exclaims, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Patience, Mio. We mustn't allow our eagerness to cloud our judgment or lead us into reckless endeavors, Tomo cautions, shooting her a warning glance, but there is a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Azane couldn't help but share in their enthusiasm. Tomo is right. But the opportunity before us is indeed exciting. With prudence and teamwork, we can achieve greatness, she agrees, though she tempers it with a measure of caution. Naruto remains silent with a pensive expression on his face as he mulls over the guild master's words. His mind is already racing with possibilities, formulating strategies and contemplating the various challenges that lay ahead, but one thing is certain, the coming months promise to be anything but dull. They head back downstairs to find Eliza, but Naruto suddenly freezes as a powerful chill runs up his spine. His eyes narrow and instinctively scans the guild hall for any potential threats. Naruto, is everything alright? Azane says, her voice carrying a note of concern. Tomo and Mio immediately tenses and ready to spring into action at the slightest provocation. Naruto's gaze zeroes in on the source of the unsettling sensation, a young woman with long but scarlet hair and piercing brown eyes. She wears custom-made armor, a blue skirt and black boots with diamond-shaped silver earrings adorning her ears. There is an aura of power emanating from her, a palpable presence that set Naruto's senses on edge while Ghost whines. Who is that? Mio murmurs, her eyes following Naruto's gaze. Tomo's brow furrows as she studies the scarlet-haired woman. I sense a formidable presence, she remarked, her voice low. Naruto remains silent for a moment, but his expression is guarded as he regards the enigmatic figure. The scarlet-haired woman seems to sense their scrutiny and her gaze shifts in their direction. For a fleeting moment, their eyes meet and Naruto feels an electric jolt coursing through him as if he were staring into the depths of a raging inferno. He turns away and continues walking while suppressing a shudder, moving past the scarlet-haired woman alongside his companions as they see Eliza. Eliza, who is that woman? Naruto murmurs, his voice low and cautious while leaning close to her. Ah, I see you've noticed Sarah's Bulga. She is an S-rank adventurer. One of the most formidable and renowned adventurers, Eliza replies after following his gaze, her expression shifting to one of understanding mingled with a hint of wariness. Azane's eyes widens at the revelation, S-rank. She whispers, awe and trepidation evident in her tone. Mio lets out a low whistle as her eyes gleam with a mixture of curiosity and mischief. Impressive. I can see why Naruto sensed such power emanating from her, she murmurs, her gaze flickering back towards the scarlet-haired woman. We would do well to exercise caution around one of such stature. Though I wouldn't mind facing her, Tomo cautions, her voice measured yet carrying a subtle playful edge. Naruto's mind is whirling as he processes this new information of C and S rank adventurer, face to face as he heard stories of his father, from the Sandaime, even his godmother and others. The highest echelon of warriors, a place reserved for those who had achieved legendary feats and mastered their craft to an unparalleled degree. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of curiosity and a desire to learn more about this enigmatic figure. The guild master mentioned temporary housing for us to the east of the city. Could you provide us with the details? Naruto says, shaking himself back and turning to Eliza. Of course. The guild maintains a small cluster of homes on the eastern outskirts. Well suited for visiting adventurers and their companions, Eliza says, her expression brightening and she inclines her head respectfully. Azane's eyes light up with anticipation. That sounds perfect for our needs, she remarks, her gaze flickering towards Naruto for approval. Mio is ever the mischievous one and couldn't resist teasing Azane, eager for a cozy little abode. Are we? She quips, a playful grin tugging at the corners of her lips. A secure base of operations will indeed be invaluable as we navigate the challenges ahead, Tomo muses, shooting Mio a look but expression slightly playful. The homes are modest but well maintained. Each one offers ample space for a small group. With basic amenities and a shared training ground nearby, Eliza explains, and all four of them nod. Naruto nods as his mind is already envisioning the potential benefits of having a dedicated training area. That sounds ideal. Do these homes have corrals or stables for horses? We have 4 steeds that will require accommodation, he remarks, glancing at his companions. Eliza's brows rise slightly at the query. Of course. The homes themselves don't have individual stables. But there is a shared stable and corral area adjacent to the training grounds. It should be more than sufficient to house your mounts, she responds, pausing momentarily to consider the arrangement and retrieving a folded parchment map from her desk, but also producing a set of iron keys. Here are the details you'll need. The homes are situated about a 20-minute walk from the city's east gate. Nestled in a secluded yet accessible area, Eliza said, handing the items to Naruto. He accepts the map and keys, weighing them in his palm as he studies the parchment intently. Azane peers over his shoulder with her brows furrowing slightly as she traces the marked route with her fingertip. It seems we'll need to follow this path. Passing through the eastern gate and continuing along the main road for a stretch before veering off onto a smaller trail, Azane murmurs, her tone pensive. A prudent location. Secluded enough to afford privacy and security. Yet within reasonable proximity to the city should we require supplies or information, Tomo remarks, her sharp gaze flickering between the map and the keys. And I'm sure the seclusion will come in handy for certain extracurricular activities, Mio adds with a wink, eliciting a glance from Tomo. Thank you for your assistance, Eliza. We'll make our way there shortly, Naruto said, his tone sincere. Of course. The guild is here to support its adventurers in whatever way we can. Should you require anything further, don't hesitate to ask, Eliza says, inclining her head and a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Naruto gestures for his companions to follow as they make their way towards the guild's entrance with a final nod of appreciation. I can't wait to see our new accommodations. It'll be a welcome change from sleeping under the stars or in cramped inns, Azane murmurs, her voice tinged with excitement. Indeed, a secure base of operations will undoubtedly prove invaluable as we embark on the challenges ahead, Tomo says, her lips quirking upwards in a hint of a smile. Last one there has to muck out the stables. Mio calls over her shoulder, prompting a chorus of groans and chuckles from her companions. They pass through the guild's oak doors and step out into the bustling city streets as Naruto couldn't help but feel a surge of determination coursing through his veins. The prospect of establishing a permanent home, even if temporary, fills him with a sense of purpose and resolve. Let's not keep our new abode waiting. We have much to prepare for and our journey is just beginning, Naruto said, a hint of a smile tugging at the corners of his lips, and unfurls the map once more, tracing the marked route with his fingertip. Naruto turns to his companions after tucking the map and keys securely into his pocket while rubbing Ghost's head. Let's retrieve our steeds from the stables before we depart, he said, his tone carrying a hint of excitement. Shinbariku, I can't wait to see our new home. Even if it's temporary. I wonder if the horses will like it, Azane remarks, adjusting Ghost in her arms now. Mio let out a dramatic sigh. I suppose we can't just leave our faithful companions behind, she quips, though her eyes sparkled with mirth. I would prepare to run like a shinobi, but we should ensure their well-being, Tomo chides gently with a hint of a smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Naruto leads the way towards the city's stables and makes a stop for some food to feed Ghost and Mio, and they soon reach the stable complex with the familiar scents of hay and horseflesh greeting their senses. A grizzled stable hand emerged from the depths of the stables and his face etched with weather-worn lines, back for her horses. I reckon, he calls out, recognition flickering in his eyes. Indeed. We've secured lodgings outside the city and must retrieve our mounts, Naruto says, inclining his head in greeting. Aye. They're waitin' for ye. Just follow me. The stable hand bobs his head and gestures towards the stables with a calloused hand. He leads them through the stables and the air thick with the scent of straw and the gentle whickering of horses. They approach the designated stalls and 4 magnificent steeds comes into view as Azane approaches the white mare. Hello Moondancer, she coos, her voice gentle and soothing while stroking her velvety nose. Ready ride Liam, Naruto says, as the black stallion nuzzles his palm. They ready their horses, securing saddles and tack before leading the horses out of the stables and into the bustling city streets. Safe travels adventurers, the stable hand calls after them, his voice gruff but laced with a hint of respect. Naruto nods in acknowledgement with a wave, his hand tightening on Liam's reins as they make their way towards the eastern gate. They pass through the city's eastern gates with a nod to the guards and onto the open road. The sprawling countryside stretches out before them, beckoning with the promise of adventure and new horizons. The gentle breeze carries the scent of wildflowers and freshly tilled soil, caressing their faces as they ride. Come on. The trail awaits. Mio calls out over her shoulder, a mischievous grin plastered across her face and urging her mare into a brisk trot. Patience Mio, Tomo chides, glancing to Naruto. Azane couldn't help but giggle at their banter with her fingers gently stroking Moondancer's mane. Don't worry Tomo. Mio is simply eager to see our new accommodations, she reassures her companion. Let her have her fun, Naruto said, his tone fond and holding Liam's reins. They maintain a steady pace and allowing Mio to forge ahead while keeping her within sight. The sun-dappled path wound its way through rolling hills and verdant meadows, the air filled with the melodic trills of songbirds. Mio reins in her mare after nearly 20 minutes of riding with her eyes scanning the landscape. There. That must be the path Eliza mentioned, she exclaims, pointing towards a narrow trail that branches off from the main road. Naruto and the others catch up with their mounts slowing to a leisurely walk as they study the map once more. You're right. This trail should lead us straight to the guild's temporary housing, he confirms, tracing the marked route with his fingertip. I can hardly wait to see what awaits us. Azane says, her sparkling with excitement as they turn onto the narrower path and the undergrowth pressing in on either side. Let us remain vigilant. These secluded trails could harbor unseen dangers, Tomo says, her gaze sweeping the surrounding foliage for any potential threats. They venture deeper into the wooded trail as the sounds of birdsong and rustling leaves envelope them, creating a soothing melody. Naruto breathes in the crisp and earthy scent of the forest, but a sense of peace washes over him. Suddenly a clearing opens up before them, revealing a cluster of modest yet well-maintained homes nestled amidst the trees. A small training ground stretches out behind the dwellings, its packed earth surface already bearing the marks of countless sparring sessions. There it is, our new home, at least for the time being, Naruto said, his voice tinged with satisfaction. Azane's eyes widen as she takes in the quaint yet cozy abodes. It's perfect. Which one do you think is ours? She breathes, her gaze flickering from one dwelling to the next. Only one way to find out. Mio exclaims, guiding her steed towards the nearest house. Naruto dismounts from Liam and turns to his companions with his expression resolute. Well, let's find our home as Mio says, he said, his voice carrying a note of anticipation. Naruto scans the array of modest dwellings, his gaze settling on a small tag hanging from one of the doors and checking the tag on the iron key. Ah, there it is, Naruto exclaims, gesturing towards the two-story abode nestled amidst the cluster of homes. Naruto creates a quartet of clones with a puff of smoke. You know what to do, he instructs them, nodding towards their patient mounts. The clones swiftly tend to the horses and begin guiding them towards the shared stables at the edge of the clearing. The four head for their designated home and up the steps as Naruto slips the key in and the lock clicks open, ushering them into their new abode. The interior is simple yet inviting, with a cozy sitting area adorned with plush chairs and a crackling hearth. A modest dining space nestled adjacent to the kitchen, the aroma of freshly polished wood permeating the air. Sunlight filters through the windows, casting warm pools of light across the polished floorboards. Not bad. Not bad at all, Mio proclaims, her gaze roving over the homely furnishings with an appreciative nod. Naruto's lips curves into a content smile as he surveys their new sanctuary, the promise of adventures yet to come dancing in his eyes. Let's get settled in. Who knows what tomorrow may bring, Naruto suggests, his voice brimming with anticipation. Mio bounds up the wooden staircase with her footfalls echoing against the polished treads. Race you to the bedrooms. She calls out, her voice tinged with playful mischief. Must you turn everything into a competition? Tomo chides, though her lips twitched with the hint of a smile. Azane giggles with her delicate fingers tracing the intricate carvings that adorned the banister. I'll take the lead, she offers, her tone gentle yet resolute. Naruto follows Azane's graceful ascent with his eyes roving over the cozy upstairs landing as Ghost sniffs everything. 3 doors greet them, each leading to a modestly appointed bedroom, their windows framing glimpses of the verdant landscape beyond. Mio flings open the nearest door and peers inside with unabashed curiosity. Dibs on this one, she declares, her gaze sweeping over the simple furnishings and the inviting quilted bed. Must you always be the first to stake your claim? Tomo chides, though her tone holds no true ire. We'll take the one at the end. The view from that window looks simply divine, Azane announces, gesturing towards the farthest door with her melodic laugh that fills the very air with warmth. Looks like this one's mine then, Tomo remarks, pushing the portal open to reveal a modestly appointed chamber and its walls adorned with tapestries depicting fantastical beasts. They continue to explore their respective quarters with the soft pattering of footsteps echoed through the hallway, each of them reveling in the simple pleasures of their new abode. Mio pokes her head out and her eyes alight with curiosity. Did you guys see the bathrooms? One of them has this massive tub. Big enough for all of us, she inquires, her brow furrowed in contemplation. Tomo's cheeks flush ever so slightly at the implication and her gaze averting momentarily. Perhaps we should refrain from such indulgences, she murmurs, her voice tinged with a hint of embarrassment. A long soak might be just what we need after our travels, Azane says, her eyes sparkling with mirth. Naruto chuckles, his amusement evident in the crinkles that formed at the corners of his eyes over Azane's shoulder. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still have to check out the rest of the place, he interjects, his tone gentle yet firm. Their curiosity is piqued as they venture back downstairs, their footfalls echoing through the cozy abode. Naruto leads the way with his gaze drawn towards the back door, its weathered frame beckoning with the promise of new discoveries. He pushes it open and steps out onto a modest patio with Ghost running out, the fragrant scent of blooming flowers wafting through the air. A well-tended garden stretches out before them, its neatly tilled rows bursting with vibrant hues and verdant foliage. Would you look at that? Who knew we'd have our own little slice of paradise right here? Mio breathes, her eyes widening in appreciation. Azane clasps her hands together and her expression one of pure delight. It's lovely, she murmurs, her gaze drinking in the kaleidoscope of colors that dances across the meticulously arranged beds. Tomo nods with her lips curving into a unguarded smile. A fitting sanctuary for our weary souls, she remarks, her fingers trailing along the petals of a vibrant rose. Naruto's gaze sweeps over the idyllic scene and a sense of contentment washing over him. We'll have to make sure to tend to it properly. A garden like this deserves to be cherished, he said, his voice carrying a note of reverence. As the sun begins its descent, casting warm hues across the tranquil oasis, and they linger in the garden, basking in the beauty that surrounded them. For now at least, their worries seem to melt away, replaced by a sense of belonging and the promise of new beginnings.